Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the No Laying Up podcast. Soly here. Got a fun deep dive, another one with my guy KVV. We're going to detail our thought process here, but we look back at 4 different masters. We each got to choose 2 masters to kind of do a deep dive on. We'll explain all that when we get to that part. But first, got to give, of course, a shout out to our friends at Roback. You all know Roback. Best fit, best feel. Roback's Azalea collection is back and better than ever. The designs are next level. The products are amazing as always, and we are fired up for these really big events in golf that are going on here in the spring. After seeing this collection, the performance polos are moisture wicking. They got great stretch. The collar is crisp. It does not lose its shape. They fit way better than those typical old boxy polos. Simply put, they're the best designs paired with the best feeling polos. You all know about the performance hoodies. Best hoodie I've ever laid hands on. Best hoodie I've ever worn. Still a favorite of my daughter to nap on. I throw it on every morning when I go get her out of bed or when we go down for the morning nap. All that stuff. Wear them on the course or off, just in everyday life. They're that good. They also just released their looper shorts. They're made with belt loops that can be worn both on and off the course. The first of their kind for Roback. They're incredibly comfortable. They got the signature freeze-dried fabric that ensures the shorts are easy to move in and they keep up with every swing. So if you haven't already, time to load up on some Roback, both for yourself and for others. Use code NLU at Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with code NLU. Spring golf is not the same without Roback. Onto the pod. All right, KVV, we are back. Another deep dive. We are changing up our format a little bit for this in advance of the 2024 Masters. We usually pick a year and look back at a full year's worth of majors. We each cover 2 of them. Instead, we had a little special assignment, asked you to go back to maybe a year we may never get to in terms of a majors deep dive and just look at some Masters as we look forward to our favorite week of the year. Kind of a free-for-all, kind of could decide whatever you wanted to decide, what you wanted to look into, what you wanted to dig up. Harder than I thought it would be, honestly, because once you kind of get down a rabbit hole, you're kind of like, well, I'm kind of committed to this year. Here we go. But take us to what you're going to cover today, and then I'll fill you in on the 2 that I'm going to cover.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to 1977, the year I was born, which I didn't even think of until just this moment. So I don't want to act like that was some grand plan. I have always wanted to do one of these about one of the Masters in the 70s. It's a little bit, in some ways, it's not quite as hard as I would say one in the 60s, where the television coverage isn't readily as sort of extensive. But a super fun era of golf. I cannot tell you how much I love the outfits. So I don't know if you realize this, but like guys, golfers in the 70s basically are like Brooklyn hipsters rebooted. I mean, you cannot believe how sick some of the drip is in these guys. I absolutely like Rick Massengale, Tom Kite. These guys could fit very easily in like Flatbush, hanging out with some of Neil's bros. It's unbelievable fashion of that era.
Well, and if you're listening to this in your car, we are going to have a visual element to this episode on YouTube. We have a brand new No Laying Up podcast YouTube channel. We're going to do our best not to, we're going to flash a bunch of stuff on the screen. If you can listen in your car, but you may miss out on some of the visual elements of this episode. Always hard to balance a couple of those things, but I know I got a bunch of images from the ones that I decided to cover, which I wanted to relive 2011 because it was mayhem. It was a very vivid memory for me in my getting back into my love of golf. It was a huge moment for a lot of reasons. We'll uncover a lot of those. And then I also want to do something on Seve. I feel like the only time we end up covering Seve on this pod is when some old timer comes on and relays a story about Seve cheating. And I think there's probably more to the story.
Yeah, he's a decent player, a
little
the
bit more
sum total of his skills is more than cheating, I think.
So I wanted to dive into the 1980 Masters, which I kind of thought might be more interesting than it was, but there's definitely some stuff in there to chat about and uncover. But 2011 is going to be the bulk of my deep dive. So we'll start getting to that. What's your second year that you picked?
1989, the Taylor Swift year of Masters. Very excited to bring you some anecdotes from that too. That'll wrap us up, bring us home.
I think we could do, we can almost do one of these for each major championship. But when I mentioned the 2011 Masters, what comes to mind for you, just off the top? This is not that long ago. This is 13 years ago. What comes to mind?
Is this Rory's meltdown?
Okay, yeah, it is. That's good that you're at least asking that question. Maybe it's not as vivid as we'd hope because it is one of the most exciting in terms of runs that were made, final action, hole outs, chip ins, and maybe one of the more memorable collapses ever. And it is gosh, let's just I'll get right into it. I wrote out to start here that this is about as close to peak as you can get in terms of Sunday action. Like, despite the ultimate winner not being a big name, Charl Schwartzel does win. Sorry to spoil that for people, but
God, how dare you?
Phil comes in. He's the defending champion of the Masters, and he's coming off a win in the prior week at the Houston Open. Answering as fast as you can, I bet you can't guess who the world number one is right now.
Duval.
It is Martin Keimer.
No idea. Martin Keimer. Okay. Duval's right out of the game at this point. Sorry for the.
That's going to be a fun one. Lee Westwood is number 2 in the world. Phil is 3, Luke Donald 4, Graham McDowell 5, Paul Casey 6. In case anyone has any questions about the official world golf rankings and maybe European favoritism around this time, Tiger Woods
Soly
is number 7 and falling fast. Steve Stricker is number 8. 21-year-old Rory McIlroy is the 9th player in the world. Matt Kuchar 10th. Dustin Johnson is the 11th ranked player in the world. Charl Schwartzel is the 29th ranked player in the world, and he opens the week at 100-1. And listen, I was not covering golf at this time. Be very, very honest. I had not heard of Charl Schwartzel before this Masters. Had you?
No, definitely not. Where were you in 2011? What's going on in your life at this point?
I'm 25 years old, hating my job probably in Chicago, but I remember this Sunday so vividly. I remember I was living on Burling Street in Chicago. It was maybe the nicest April day in Chicago ever. We grilled out steaks on our back little tiny ass patio that we had. And I just remember the sun absolutely beaming and sitting there watching the Masters, and my roommate, who was not a huge golf fan, like freaking out about the action that unfolded. A certain player in particular that made a front nine run that is about as memorable of a major championship run as I've had in my lifetime. It doesn't end up working out, which is maybe not the reason that maybe the reason it's not as remembered as maybe it should. This was big. This was just huge for me. We were just starting a fantasy golf league that would ultimately lead to no laying up starting, and I just was starting to watch a lot of golf around this time period. Where were you?
2011, I was also hating my job at the Baltimore Sun. I was really, really hoping to get a new job at Sports Illustrated. I had interviewed at Sports Illustrated, and they were like, "Yeah, like you can like freelance maybe for us." And I was so excited. I went back to the Baltimore Sun and said, like, "Oh, Sports Illustrated said like I could, pitch them some stories." And the Sun was like, "Yeah, sorry, like you're exclusive to us. Like you're not allowed to write for Sports Illustrated." So I spent most of 2011 kind of moping until ESPN came along and said, "Would you like to interview for a job?" And so, big moment in my life too.
Phil Mickelson does come in as the favorite at 6-1. Tiger is 9-1. Westwood 14-1. Nick Watney 16-1. I couldn't figure that one out. I don't really know where that one came from. Martin Keimer 18-1, and then Rory, Mahan, Dustin Johnson, and Luke Donald are all 25-1 coming in. Little note I found in the BBC's Saturday gossip column: Graham McDowell and Ian Poulter had been told to curb their prodigious Twitter output by Augusta national officials. McDowell said that's fair enough. Actually, that comes from the Daily Express, but I know Poulter had done some stuff around this time. I couldn't find what. I think Graham may have done some scrubbing around that time period, but just found that funny. A group of officials from a tournament that's run once a year, not a tour, nothing like that. Just like one tournament is like, "Hey guys, you need to calm down the Twitter a little bit."
Wow. They did not want the behind the scenes Masters secrets being revealed on GMAX Twitter.
9-time major winner Gary Player, I believe you've heard of him, says he has a feeling 21-year-old Rory McIlroy could win the green jacket this week. He said, "Rory is so talented. I just love the way he plays golf. However, we don't know how he will rise to the occasion if he comes down the line on Sunday and he's leading."
Gary Player. Sponsored by DraftKings, right? You should have been a punter in those days, letting the people know what's up.
I'm getting word that the question that was asked right before that was, "Good morning, Mr. Player. How are you?"
Good morning, Soly. I heard Graham McDowell is Twitter. It's just going all over this morning. Ian Poulter revealing dirty secrets of Augusta.
But I like this McIlroy fella. Japanese amateur Hideki Matsuyama has taken a last-minute decision to accept an invitation to play at Augusta. Can you remember or think back to why this would potentially be a last-minute decision for Hideki? And I don't remember this part. He's the Asia Pacific Amateur, maybe it was just the Asian Amateur champion at the time. So he has a Masters
Okay.
invite. But thinking back to 2011, do you remember?
The would it have something to do with the Olympics where you're not allowed to participate as a pro yet in the Olympics?
It did not. It was the 19-year-old attends university in Sendai, an area that suffered heavily when the earthquake and tsunami struck on the
Oh,
11th of March. Matsuyama said, "I've decided to play because so many people have pushed me, the people at my university who have suffered, and my teammates and my parents who made me start to play the sport of golf." So
wow.
yeah, I did not remember the world events kind of coinciding with that. Obviously, Hideki would go on to win the Masters 10 years later, but around the mid 2010s, I'm wondering if you remember this. I'm specifically thinking of the Charlie Rose interview that Tiger did, I think in 2016. Tiger started to downplay his goal of catching Jack Nicklaus. Do you remember any of that about, kind of saying it was never my goal to win 18 majors? It was, 15 was always my goal for some reason.
I do. I wrote a Tiger essay at some point at ESPN that sort of referenced this Charlie Rose interview. He was kind of like sort of sly about it. He was like, "No, that Charlie Rose was like, that's not your goal," and he was like, "No, it's never been my goal. My goal is to win more." Like, and he would sort of like kind of like be a little bit cheeky about it. So I do remember a little bit of that. That he kind of twisted the mythology, I guess,
Yeah.
around it.
Um, and so there's a quote in here that from ahead of the Masters says, "But Woods is still eyeing Jack Nicklaus's record of 18 major championships." It says, "It has always been my goal to pass Jack. From well before I turned pro, that's what I set my eyes on in terms of golf. I absolutely want to do it. The benchmark and gold standard in this sport is 18." So that if he ever tries to deny that he said that happened in sometime right before the 2011 Masters. This is, of course, just coming off few turbulent years in the life of Tiger Woods. 2010 was the first first event he played since the scandal broke. It's kind of a muted reception. Does not play very good golf in 2010 and into 2011, and there's just a bunch of question marks coming into the Masters for Tiger Woods. But there are more players in the Masters field this week than there have been for 45 years, as 99 players will tee off on Thursday. And Augusta
Mm.
National Chairman Billy Payne says officials will take a close look at their qualification criteria to decide whether a change is required. That comes from the Associated Press.
Me and some of the boys have been talking about too many people at the Masters, Solly.
Well, I looked in the qualification criteria and tried to find the differences. I did not examine this closely, but there was an exemption for the top 30 leaders on the prior season's money list,
Mm.
which that went away. I do believe that went away. But if you finish in the top 30 now in the FedEx Cup, you do. If you make the Tour Championship, you get in the Masters. That existed then, but also a top 30 for money exemption, and I believe that is what has gone away.
What is
I
this comes up in my thing, but now what is you get to come back next year? It's like top 10,
I think
top
top
15,
12. I think
top 12.
12
Oh,
is
that's
what it
right.
is now. Yeah.
So it used to be top 24, which
Wow.
will come up in mine, which is a lot to invite back just for a high finish.
The top 16 in ties in the 2010
Six.
Masters. So that has changed
Okay.
as well. So they
Mhm.
did look into that qualification criteria. That was from the Associated Press. Northern Ireland's Rory McIlroy is turning into a big American football fan. He has confessed a love for the NFL's what team? What team
Oh
is Rory a
man.
fan of?
The Green Bay Packers.
The New York Jets.
Oh my goodness. Rory,
And he's
there's too many metaphors here for your late stage malaise fair to be a Jets fan.
He is so intrigued that he bought a football on Wednesday before tossing it around to kill time before his impressive opening round.
Wow.
So
I wonder who he's tossing it around with. Probably Phil, good buds. Him and Phil. Phil is always warming up like a quarterback, in the parking lot.
So Thursday, Rory and Alvaro Quiros shoot 65 to lead by 2 over KJ Choi and YE Yang. Phil shoots 70. Tiger shoots 71. Charl Schwartzel shoots a 69. And on Friday, Rory shoots 69 to get to 10 under par, open up a 2-shot lead over Jason Day, who shot a 64 on
That's
that
right.
Friday. Tiger shoots 66 and is 3 back at
Woo!
-7. He's paired with KJ Choi on Saturday. He shot a 31 on the back nine. So that Friday afternoon coverage window, he blitzed it with a 31 on the back. This is Jason Day's first Masters, and he's going to be in the final group on Saturday. Schwartzel shoots 71 and is 6 back at 4 under heading into the weekend. Missing the cut, Graham McDowell, Martin Keimer, Padraig Harrington, and Hunter Mahan were some of the notables that missed the cut. So we get to Saturday. Rory shoots at 70. His lead is 4 going into Sunday over Angel Cabrera, KJ Choi, Jason Day, and Charl Schwartzel. Rory was 1 over on the day on Saturday through 12 holes, but birdied the 2 par 5s and rolled in a 30-foot birdie putt on the 17th. Tiger shoots a 74. Adam Scott is in the mix at 7 under, and he's 5 back. And New York Times writes about a moment where Rory pours in that 30-footer on 17 and got a roar so loud that Tiger had to back off in the fairway ahead. And remember, around that Saturday evening, looks like the crowning of a 21-year-old Rory McIlroy. This looks like, all right, we have a passing of the torch. And written in the New York Times, says the significance of the moment was inescapable. Woods, a 4-time Masters champion whose shots have prompted so many similar roars at Augusta, had to make way for McIlroy, who is poised to become the youngest Masters champion since Woods himself in 1997. This is the first time that no American player is among the top 3 after 54 holes, and only the 3rd time since 95 that neither Phil Mickelson nor Woods is in the top 5 heading into the final round. Again, let me repeat that. Only the 3rd time since 1995 that neither Phil nor Tiger were in the top 5 entering the final round.
That was a hell of a run between the
Seriously.
two of them. I mean, it was really, really awesome golf.
Truly anchored by every single Sunday, almost every single Sunday, that one of those two was going to be in the mix. I said, this is still Saturday. Patience has not come easily for the freewheeling McIlroy, but it was his hallmark Saturday on a muggy afternoon, and his demeanor is so calm and his swing so steady that Day, a 23-year-old who has played all 3 rounds with McIlroy, said he would be difficult to catch on Sunday. The way Rory is swinging and the shots he's hitting, he can probably go out tomorrow and shoot 70 and win the tournament, Day said. And if he does win this thing, he'll deserve it. He's played really well. Rory would said, a win for me personally would be huge. It would be huge. And for the game of golf, it would be nice as well. It would be nice to get a major early and show some of the young guys that it is possible. I'm going to go out there and play as well as I can, and we'll see what happens. 4 strokes are not a lot around this golf course.
Oh, buddy. Yep. Ain't that the truth?
Man, it's so much worse than I remember it. Somehow, it's just so much worse than I remember it. But we get to Sunday. Jim Nantz welcomes you on the telecast with news that it's going to hit 87 degrees on this Sunday. That's 30 degrees to our Celsius-speaking friends out there. The first shot we see is Tiger Woods coming into the 2nd green. He's got 164 in with his 3rd. Not ideal, but he stuffs it, and he goes on to pimp walk that putt into the hole on the 2nd. It's just a beautiful, beautiful day. That red, it was a different Pantone on this day. I don't know why this is just so vivid in my memory, but that sun was just hitting Tiger in a different way. And he had a lot of pimp walking going on around this time. But
I really loved back when he wore the dark red and not the like pink red that sort of became more his style later. Like the dark red, that's why it worked so well at Augusta. Like it was such a great contrast, right?
And it's worth noting Tiger's using that Nike putter at the time, that kind of not mallet, right, but that weird backed putter, and he's putting terribly. Like they run a montage around this time of all the short putts he missed on Saturday. But he gets up there and he drives it up near the 3rd green and flips a beautiful flop up there to short range birdie. He's 7 under, 5 back. Not a lot going on just yet. We get our first look at the young amateur Hideki Matsuyama.
Wow.
Skinny looking Hideki, a lot more animated. He chips in a couple times on this day, and he's just a very different looking Hideki.
Even his grips are like really impressive. He's got, if you can't see on the podcast, he's got like bright blue grips on his thing here. That's sick.
So he chips in on 3, and they make a mention of the tsunami and the effect it's had back home, and kind of that story that we talked about early on. But I remember this so vividly because there was just the narrative was just right there in front of you. Like, it's the Rory show. It's a lot of anticipation. He's so young. He's got a 4-shot lead. We've seen all this happen so many times at the Masters. And maybe I just, what's so vivid here is obviously how poorly he plays, but it's just a bad fit. Like, it's a really bad fit from our guy. He's got black sleeves with weird stripes. He's got the Jeremiah hat going. The pants just didn't quite fit the same. They just got the loose around the waist, that the shirt just gets untucked throughout the course of the day. And it's just all images that I assign with how poorly he played on this day. But Man, just look at this young face, this young buck who's in the little montage there with the baby fat and kind of before his body started to change. But
It's like a different person. Like it's
yeah,
truly like it's like someone went on a makeover show or had like
yeah.
plastic surgery or whatever. Like it's dramatic how different he looks back then.
He also, to race ahead to the end, he handles it with grace and class.
Mm.
For a 21-year-old, it is pretty remarkable. Like his interview afterward and how everything happened and how kind of to come to terms or how he came to terms with everything. But so Tiger's birdied the first 2 holes, but he steps up and makes a bogey on the 3 putts the 4th. He kind of blew it way left on that green, but was unable to get down in 2, which kind of signals what's ahead of when he would do some incredible things. The momentum would just stall out with some crucial missed short putts, even on this Sunday. But we get up there. Charl Schwartzel misses way right into the first green from the fairway. I mean, from the middle of the fairway, an incredibly bad shot. He's probably 35, 40 yards right of the pin. Do you remember what happens next for Mr. Schwartzel?
I do.
He bumps like a 7-iron and it
Yeah.
rolls and rolls and rolls. I mean, this is not a greenside chip in,
No.
and it goes in the hole for a chip in birdie at the first. They feature him a little bit there. He's 26 years old. His best finish in a major to this point is T14, which again, I'm not mad at myself for not having heard of Charl Schwartzel when I was a casual golf fan in 2011, but Rory steps up on the first tee and just jams a drive down there. The hole's only 445 at this point. He's got 132 in, and he's just looking like he's going to alpha this golf course. His swing is so fluid in this time. It's really something to admire.
Mm-hmm.
And he hits like just a very nervy shot. He hits a pull that actually gets really lucky and stays up on the top tier in the back left, and he can kind of putt it from greenside. But he runs the putt 5 feet by and misses the comebacker, misses it left, and that's kind of a theme of what's going to happen. So
I remember Soly thinking and I want to say this happened in real time, but it might have been like on a rewatch somewhere years later. Like, how different is history if that like first 5-footer goes in? Because it's pretty close. And like, if you just settle down and all of a sudden you've made a par on the first after hitting a pull, maybe he's out of sorts the whole day, but maybe not. Maybe he just like rips it down number 2 and all of a sudden we're off, and he does shoot 70 and wins easily. It just like one shot can kind of make you feel like, oh fuck, like now it's 3 strokes, like that's my lead, and this, it's just a whole different life.
I mean, he walks off the first green, leads 2. I mean, it was 4 overnight, and the lead is 2 over Schwartzel after that chip in. We cut to Tiger, and he hits a huge sweeper into the front left pin on 6. I mean, he hits the ball, and I mean, the broadcaster's like, whoa, like that. How far? Yeah.
One of my favorite shots of all time. He uses the slope, right? Yeah. Of like, and I think my memory of this is that Faldo thinks that he's done like made a mistake, that he's pushed it right, and instead like it does exactly. Tiger's like, get left,
be perfect.
It just goes right. Yeah, be perfect. Goes right across the green. On like a super underrated shot in the Tiger canon to be like, you know what? I'm going to hit a sweeping draw into this like pin and be below the hole on this shot.
You can get a little caught up in the lore of Tiger, but reliving this shot and a shot we're going to get to just a couple holes later for how to use the slopes at Augusta. It's not just like hit the ball into that slope, because I watched a bunch of shots come into 6 later on and no one got the bounce he got, but his shot shape leaning into that slope in it ending up below the hole like that. The goal of that shot was to end up to be putting straight up the hill, and you need to get enough momentum off the slope to do that without risking going left of that pin. No one else pulled off that shot on this day. Like no one else hit that kind of style of shot into that front left pin. It takes the slope down there to about 12 feet. Sure enough, absolute Drano walks in the putt before it's even in the hole, just steps it right in. He's getting the crowd going. I mean, there's some momentum. There's some cheers going on. Like it's feeling like a little something here. This is his 3rd birdie so far of the day. We cut back to Rory. He drives it in the bunker on 2 and then hits the face of the bunker with the second shot. He gets, from the middle of the fairway, he pulls his 3rd shot into the left bunker and the pin's all the way back right. That's not looking good, but he does scramble for par from that left bunker. Maybe he's got some momentum going. He's still got his lead. No, he does not have his lead anymore, because 1 hole up ahead, Charl Schwartzel in the 3rd fairway lays back off the tee, lands one 12 feet right of the pin, spins it left into the hole for eagle.
Right.
Charl Schwartzel is tied for the lead at the Masters after 3 holes with a chip in on 1 and a hole out from the middle of the fairway on the 3rd hole.
It's so easy to, because of what happens at the end of this round for Schwartzel, remember like, oh man, like obviously he just went and took it. But like some luck went his way like early. I mean, obviously he hit 2 great shots, but you don't chip in on 1 from where he was and then hole out on 3 without just it being your fucking day.
Dude, but it's so bizarre. Like skipping, I won't mention Schwartzel for a long time in the middle of the round because all right, he chips in for birdie on 1, holes out for eagle on 3. He bogeys 4 and then pars 5 through 14. He made no
Wow.
birdies, no bogeys from 5 to 14 before again his
Yeah,
very
what
famous
happens later?
finish at the very end. But it was just such a bizarre day. Like it really looking back on it, it's like, man, did Schwartzel sneak up and steal this? How do we not see it coming? And there's a bunch of mayhem that happens later. There's a lot of people that came up out of nowhere and almost won this thing. But we skip ahead to number 7. Tiger stuffs it using the slope again. He makes birdie, and we've got our first big fist pump of the day.
Woo.
This is this is Tiger's 4th birdie of the front 9 to go along with the bogey that he made on the 4th hole. And it's just like they're lingering. He's 8 under par now. He's 3 back of the lead, which is tied at 11 under par with Rory and Schwartzel at this moment. Rory settles the nerves a little bit. He hits a really sick wedge into 3, but he misses a pretty short birdie putt. And
Yeah.
Schwartzel goes on bogey 4, but Rory's got the lead back, but he's just got the hangdog thing
Yeah,
going.
he
Like
does.
he just has this body language that just isn't all the way there. Tiger hits a great drive on 8, and he's got 3 wood in from the left center of the fairway. And he hits what is honestly maybe the most vivid shot of the decade for me.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with this shot, and the pin is all the way in the back left on this Sunday, and it's 278 up the hill that he's got. And he hits this shot, and it is, even with showing you the image here, it is hard to describe how far right this
Yeah.
shot starts. I mean, he hits a swooper of all swoopers,
Mhm.
and it gets up there. And the key is it banks off the right slope of these of the mounds around the green and doesn't land too deep into this hole. It is a little downwind, doesn't land too deep, but the shape of the shot and the using of the bank of that right side springs this thing all the way to the back left of the green, all the way back, almost right next to the hole. I mean, it's 10, 12 feet away for eagle, and it's just an incredible shot. It rolls forever. It's just about it's peak golf shot right there. And again, you watch all the other shots come in this day. Rory goes long because he doesn't use the slope to kill it into the bank. He lands it too far into the green. He doesn't have the right shot shape, and no one else. Some of the people that were landing the shots farther left were actually getting kicked right by the left slopes. Like no
Mhm.
one hit the right shot coming into that green. Tiger used the ground, used the turf to get that moment, and
So
it's
if
just
you
awesome.
put it together a list of his 10 most memorable Masters shots, I feel like 3 of them would come from this front 9.
Yes,
Uh,
and
it's
one from the
just
back nine.
yeah.
There's
This
shot to
is such
15.
a like I don't know, underrated is sort of a silly word with Tiger because we rate the man very highly. But there's so many in the Masters that he did not win, like shots from this tournament where I'm like, wow, that's super memorable. I not only remember seeing that, I've watched it on YouTube about 11 dozen times.
Well, it's you always did the Can Tiger come back? Can Tiger come back? He's never really had a major comeback on a Sunday in a major. Like you're waiting for that to happen. And
Mhm,
again, he's not playing very good golf at this time. Like it wasn't.
mhm.
This was a little bit of a surprise that this was happening. And I honestly do vividly remember like the build up and like the move to the edge of the couch and up to that eagle
Yeah.
putt because it was like, holy shit! If he makes this, he's within 1, and it's
Mhm,
like again, this is the era of the Tiger roars like have an effect on people. Like this is
mhm.
a very real thing that's happening. So sure enough, he steps up and drains the putt and just lets loose a massive fist pump. The crowd goes absolutely ape shit. He walks off the green and just lets out an enormous "fuck yeah" as he gets the ball out of the hole. Unmistakable, like very unmistakable that that's what he yelled.
You can tell this is the Tiger getting yoked era too.
Yes.
Like the muscles there in the bicep there and the trap are enormous.
His only top 10 of the year coming into this was a T10 at the Cadillac Championship, and his most recent top 10 prior to that was a T4 at the US Open at Pebble the prior year. Like it was bad. Like it was
Yeah.
not the Tiger Woods that we knew.
This
Um,
is firing Haney not quite with Foley yet, right? Like
I
he's
I believe so. He might be with Foley. I don't quite know for sure where
I
we're
can't
at
remember
here.
how long after the scandal he and Haney parted ways, but it wasn't that long because of Haney was like pissed that he had to answer questions about
Yeah,
the scandal and that what he knew and didn't know, and of course then wrote
yeah.
the book about where Steinberg says you're his best friend, and Haney's like, "What?
What?
I'm his best friend?" One of my all-time
um,
favorite anecdotes.
so Tiger's scorecard to this point says par, birdie, birdie, bogey, par, birdie, birdie, eagle. So he's 4 under in his last 3 holes. He's 10 under par. He's within one, and he was 7 back an hour and a half ago. Like it is
Man.
a huge, huge run. The flash leaderboard. Rory's at 11 under. Tiger's at 10. Schwartzel at 10. Cabrera and Day are at 8 under par. Dan Jenkins tweets out at this point: Tiger has passed or caught 5 continents in 8 holes.
Good old Dan.
Um, Rory continues to miss putts left. He bogeys the 5th, and Tiger Woods is tied for the lead as Rory walks off the 5th hole. There is no one ahead of Tiger Woods on the leaderboard. He's played 8 holes, and Rory and Schwartzel have played 5 holes at this point.
Somebody need to get Rory an energy drink or coffee or
It's
something at this
hang
point.
dogging.
It's super hang dogging.
Hang dog and walking off 5. To my knowledge, I have not fact checked this, but I to my memory and knowledge, and please hit me with this if it's wrong. I think this is the only time he ever held the lead on at a Masters on Sunday and did not win. I'm struggling to think of another time when he would have. He didn't. He never has the solo lead here today, and he is up ahead on the golf course. So there's kind of some birdie holes that
Sure.
kind of. It's a
It's
little
a
bit of an
fake lead.
illusion,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little bit of an illusion, but no one is beating Tiger at this point at the Masters. When again 2 hours ago he was 7 shots back. It was a remarkable unfolding of events. Like people were just rushing to their televisions at this point. Tiger gets up and down from the left bunker on 9 to shoot 31 on the front. Hasn't held a lead in a major since the '08 U.S. Open that he won, and this is obviously the first time since the scandal that he's held the lead in a major. Rory hits a wedge into 7, but he overspins it, kind of hits the wrong shot, but he drains the putt from the front fringe, gets it to 11 under, has the solo lead again, heading to the par 5.
He's
We're
back.
fine here. We're fine.
Yeah,
We're
fine.
totally fine here. Hits it over the green in 2 and cannot get up. And hits a really bad chip on the back there. It's not good. So Tiger's plodding along, hits his normal shot into the middle of the green on 12, kind of far away from the hole, but just an absolutely devastating 3-putt. I mean, he misses a putt that it was not a long putt, man. Like this is the distance I'll flash up on screen. I mean, it's a 3-foot putt that should just be an easy brush in a major championship. And he misses it left. And just the momentum completely stalls out. Cabrera birdies 8 to get within 1. He's right there with Schwartzel. Tiger's got 187 into 13, and he just nukes a ball long and left, long of the green, screaming at it to get down, and does not get up and down. Does not make birdie on the 13th from 187 in. KJ Choi birdies the 9th hole. He's 1 back. Schwartzel
Choi was a killer for a while at the Masters.
Huge Masters killer. Totally. Schwartzel shoots 34 on the front despite holing out twice. Rory has a good look for birdie on 9, misses it, and is just hang dogging again. He shoots 1 over on the front, but is still leading the Masters, heading to the back 9.
Number 10. Oh. I remember like thinking, okay, like, kid's okay. Like he survived the worst part. Like maybe he'll just sell like 2 par 5s on the back. Like he's gonna be fine. I feel like the announcers too are like, well, he's struggled a little bit, but he's got the lead, and he's he needs a good swing here, and he can win the Masters coming home.
So CBS kind of messes up the Rory shot. Like there's no setup to it. It kind of rushes into his shot, and he obviously pull hooks it straight into the trees. Nobody knows what happens. Rory audibly says, "Is there out of bounds over there?" And Faldo just goes, "What?" Like it's a really good moment.
Oh, no.
What?
Is there out
I'm
of
not
bounds
making.
over there? It's a question that I've never actually know.
There
I mean,
can't be because he's
yeah.
in between 2 cabins. Like
Yeah.
there's no exaggeration here. It is an absolute shocker as to how far left this ball is. He said, "I felt comfortable in that tee shot all week. I just started it a little left." And I having not been there, having not been there at that moment, I don't. He might be right here because we remember that shot as being absolutely dreadful. But if it really did just start a little left and hit it, I think it hits a tree
Yeah.
and ricochets way farther left. Obviously, it
Sure.
shouldn't. Not many people hit the trees right off the tee, and when it does, it's kind of overhanging the left side. Should kick it right in theory, but It takes a horrific bounce and goes backwards to the left. And then this again, the image that you have of him walking off 10 is what I have for the entire back nine. The back of his shirt gets untucked, and I don't know why this bothers me so much, but he just looks so sloppy the whole rest of the round, and it just goes so poorly. It's hard to describe how poorly this back nine goes for him.
Doesn't he get dropped from coverage at one point?
He does.
Oh,
Shock,
man.
like in some shocking moments here that won't cover. Next image we see is him
Tuck
trying
his
to tuck
shirt
his
in,
shirt in between
JP
the
said,
two
"Yo, get
cabins.
right here. Let's get your shirt tucked back in and let's make a good swing, lad."
I mean, the camera, like it's like a blurry, out of focus, shaky camera. That's the only look that they can get at him between these two buildings. I went to Google Earth to take a look at where it's, but I think it's the two houses here at the bottom of this, which is, it's not 100 yards off the tee.
No.
It's not. I mean, it truly is shocking how short this tee shot actually went.
Apparently, Clifford Roberts used to sit on his porch, which is one of these houses, and watch the whole tournament. Like that was his kind of way of thinking.
You
So
can't
there's
really see much from over there.
no, you can't. But apparently that was his jam, though. He was just basically didn't want to be bothered by people, so he would just sit on the porch and probably bark out orders. So
Dan Jenkins said he'd not seen anyone hit it there in the 61 Masters that he had covered. Which we can just pause on that moment for that number for a moment. That guy spent over a year of his life just at the Masters. It's kind of crazy, but
good life. Yeah.
Again, the iconic image of him just squaring up to punch a ball back out of the fairway between. He's lucky there's not more trees over there, but it's able to get it back into the fairway. And
I keep meaning to go to that spot and stand and just take a picture. Perhaps I'll put that on the list to share for things to take care of.
He has 3-wood into 10 and hits a ball. Again, he's not out. It's not toast yet. Like if he can hit this ball up on the green or near the green, chip up, make bogey. Like he's lost a shot. We're minus 10, but he's still the last group. Like he's got the par fives. It's not over, but he pulls this thing, and it for a brief second it looks like he's about to lose the ball, but then we see it reappear. But it's way left, way down the hill.
Goes all the way down the hill at 10. Yeah, the death spot on 10.
Yes, it's bad. And this time Tiger narrowly misses a birdie putt on the 14th hole. Kind of his momentum is stalling out a little bit. Rory's collapsing, and it looks like there's about to be a 4-way tie at the top with Cabrera, Choi, Scott, and Schwartzel, and maybe Rory if he can get up and down for bogey. But his pitch from down low left, it looks like he's got kind of an opening. I don't know how this happens, but hits a pitch and it just nails a tree. I can't tell if it's a branch or if it's a tree limb, but it just hits it and it goes dead left. He's now like long left, hitting his 5th. He barely gets it on, and he 2-putts for triple. And now it's like, dude, you're in some trouble here. Now you're 2 back. And right as this is happening, Tiger stripes it off the 15th tee. He's staring down the flag from the top of the hill. And it's a scene. It is just a sea of humanity. Again, Tiger is tied for the lead at this point after he walks off the 14th green. We tie with Cabrera, Choi, Scott, and Schwartzel. It's mayhem. It's absolute mayhem. No one has any idea what's about to unfold over the coming moments. But Tiger standing at the top of the hill. The sun, again, just hitting that red shirt. A sea of humanity on the hill there, behind 16, behind 6, around 15 green. And I've posted the video a bunch of times. I've seen the video. I see that 315-yard drive. He's got 215 to the flag, back right pin. And he just makes one of the great golf swings ever. It just is a perfectly controlled 5-iron and lets loose the sauciest club twirl to this day that I've ever seen. It is just the most nonchalant of like, yep, I've never hit a better shot.
This is the full like flex.
No. This is just
this isn't that one.
Casual.
Okay.
The casual. He doesn't like President's Cup it. It's just oh yeah, that's perfect. Like just a subtle little twirl and starts walking right after it. Lands on the green. Faraday. Oh, right at it. He never gives up. And the crowd is going apeshit. I mean, it's stuffed. It's maybe 5 feet. And again, Augusta illusion here. He's played the par 5s at this point. This putt's to take the lead outright. This is to get to 11 under par and to have the lead outright. And you hear it as he's walking up. Rory's triple gets posted, and there's a massive groan around that green. Oh, I mean, one of the loudest groans you'll ever hear as a reaction to something. They show Schwartzel tapping in for par on another hole. I think it's 11, and Rory's triple gets posted there, and you hear another enormous grab. Like it's this whole momentum shifting through this back nine of Rory's triple. And again, no phones out there. Like, you are waiting for something to get posted to hear that. Rory's in 7th place as he walks off the 10th green after teeing off in the lead on that hole.
We can watermark this so Rory can skip all this part. He can just go right to 77 when he listens to this pod. This is going to be tough to relive.
5-footer for Tiger to take the lead. He misses it low right with that dumbass Nike putter that he just could not make.
Should have just pitched in the lake at this point. That Nike putter.
I mean, he is walking off that green. He's 5 under on the day. He's now in a 5-way tie for the lead. But even then, you're like, dude, you're gonna need a couple more here to finish. It's not good.
I remember thinking, like, oh, he's so pissed. I mean, I think probably not truly understanding like the intricacies of what the lead is at Augusta at this point. I'm like, why is he so pissed off? Like, he's tied for the lead. Like, all he needs to do is like maybe birdie one more time. But it's like a fake lead, right? Like, the guys haven't played the birdie holes yet. It's, it's truly, he knows what he missed those opportunities, and he knows that he's going to walk to the 16th having just completely kind of blown his chance.
And at this time, you're probably thinking 12 is a playoff, 13 wins. And so if you get to 12 at that moment, you get one more birdie, like, you probably are going to win. Good chance to win the Masters. 12 might be good. 13 almost certainly going to be good enough. Rory steps up. He hits a good drive on 11 and back left pin over the water. Don't know why we're taking this one on with how things are going so far, Rory, but he stuffs it. I mean, you tell me how far this ball is away. Is that 10,
7 feet? Man, maybe, I guess probably 10 feet.
Augusta's zooms can be weird with some of the angles. I think it's probably a little longer than it may look to the eye. But all right, Rory, we're not dead. Steps up. Tiger steps up, almost flies it in the cup on 16, but it skips long left about 18 feet. KJ Choi kind of makes a bogey and is kind of losing a little momentum. Rory's got this birdie putt to get back within 1, misses it and runs 3 feet by. No big deal. Kevin, he missed the comebacker, and CPS has gone to commercial and they never show it. He missed a putt of no more than 3 feet. I mean, a tap in for par. And I'm watching this shot and I'm like looking at the score, the scores from that day. I'm like, no, he can't make bogey from there. Like, there's no possible way. And I kept like scrubbing the broadcast trying to find it, and they come back at IBF is when they come back, he's like, yeah, he missed a short putt back at 11 while his ball is airborne into the 12th green. Like, and I get it, he's in 7th now, but it was
while you were away, the leader completely just imploded. Yeah,
this is like one of the greatest collapses of all time. Like, can we please show this?
I think this was the beginning of my understanding of like how much more painful a final round collapse in golf is compared to other sports. Like, I haven't covered any golf at this point, but it is truly like falling down a flight of stairs for 4 hours. It's not just like in football, like you drop a pass and it's like, oh my God, we lost, that was our chance or whatever. But in golf, it's just like you have to relive it in slow motion over and over and over again. Every single drip is just a disaster, and just feeling so like much empathy for Rory, and even writing something in the Baltimore Sun about it afterwards, being like, man, that's like heartbreak personified.
Yeah, I mean, and they come back from commercial. Tiger's missing his birdie putt on 16. Cabrera's hitting on the green on 12, and Rory hits it to about 20 feet on 12, right? And it's like, okay, all right, that's fine. Jason Day birdies the 13th hole. Now he's at -10 and he's tied for the lead. Again, it's just like I can't even keep up with how often this leaderboard is changing and the names that are changing in there. Rory's got a 20-footer for birdie on 12. If we make this, we're back to 8 under par. Again, we have the par 5s ahead. Anything could happen. Whatever. Runs a 20-footer about 8 feet, or I'm sorry, runs a 20-footer about 2.5 feet by. No worries. Easy tap in par, right? No. He pulls his 2.5-footer left, and it goes about 3.5 feet by. He misses the comebacker. He misses that right. It's a double from 20 feet. He had no 3 putts through 3 days. He 4-putted this one. He's 5 under for the tournament, 7 over on the day, and he's 5 back.
I feel like Ian Biggerfinch have some speech about like how painful it is at this point. I sort of remember that. Like, you could feel the empathy for like a fellow Englishman, I guess, in some ways. Like,
well, they're kind of brushing past. He's like a footnote at this point. They're showing his shots on tape delay already, and it's just like, oh yeah, he's having a tough day. Like that, they didn't really linger on it, which I don't blame them, because there's so much happening. Like, again, it is so much happening. I hate to say we're not done yet with Rory. He famously yanks it left on 13. does the hang dog, and it splashes into the creek. The most famous image of just him, head in his hand, head in his elbow. Just truly cannot
Trying not to
imagine
cry. Yeah.
a round going this poorly. A name we have not mentioned yet to this point. Again, this is CBS's era of maybe not keeping the best tabs on the golf tournament. Again, this is extenuating circumstances for what's going on, but I didn't go back and double check this, but I think the first shot we see from this guy is a birdie putt on 16. His name is Jeff Ogilvy, and it's his 5th birdie in a row, and he's tied for the lead now. So
yeah, why not? Sure. Yeah, this guy suddenly snuck up in time for the lead.
That might not be totally accurate. They may have showed a couple of those shots, but 5 birdies in a row to tie the lead. Adam Scott then stuffs one on to 5 feet on 14. He takes the outright lead. Jason Day was in there even tighter and misses the putt. Meanwhile, Kevin, I will give you $1,000 if you can name the American who in the group ahead stuffs one on the 15th hole and makes an eagle to get within 1 back at this point.
God. Scott Verplank. I don't know.
Bo Van Pelt.
That's right. Bo Van Pelt.
No, there's no that's right. You don't remember that. I didn't
Listen,
remember
I have watched this collapse before, so I'm not gonna like it's sort of like cheating a little bit in the sense I would not have ever pulled Bo Van Pelt out of it, but I do remember being like, oh, because there, look, there's a fellow Dutchman there, a Van. I'm gonna catalog that in my brain at some point. Me and Scott Van Pelt, the Van Valkenburgs, the Van Pelts, they're like this,
Bo Van Pelt is now tied with Tiger in 1 shot back of Adam Scott in the final round of the Masters. Luke Donald steps up and rolls in a birdie. He's now at -10.
Oh my God, it's madness, Soly. It's madness.
He's 1 back, and Adam Scott is in trouble on 15 after blowing his 2nd shot way right. Tiger, he fails to birdie 17 and 18. Pretty much, his momentum is stalled out after, missing the eagle on 15 and not making the birdie on 16. He's pretty much a dick to McAtee in the interview afterward. Like, what are you going to do now? You're going to hit the range ball? So, I'm starving. I got to eat. He just is very Cantlay of just answering the questions. He was super curt to the media at this time after all the scandal and everything. But Adam Scott manages to scramble for par and hits it to a foot on 16. Absolutely stuffs it on 16. Schwartzel birdies 15 to stay within 1 as Scott taps in right ahead. But Adam Scott has the solo lead at 12 under par. And Schwartzel hits it about 20 feet under the par to the right, 20 feet under the hole to the right of 16. Adam Scott blows it way left off the tee on 17. Ends up in a bunker on 7 green. Oh, wow. Mayhem Luke Donald is finishing up on 18. He's got an awkward stance around the bunker and hits this miraculous shot to the front left pin, takes one off, bangs off the pin, and rolls off the green front right, like horribly. It was going to go past the hole, but rolls way back down the hill. Rory's been dropped from coverage. They pick him back up to show him hitting a 5-foot par putt on 15 and missing it, of course. Walks off the, untucked shirt, head down, walking off the green there. While Adam Scott's surveying his situation on 17, Schwartzel steps up and drains his birdie on 16. Vern gives it a huge, oh, yes! And he has tied Adam Scott for the lead. Scott goes bunker to bunker, hits it in the front right bunker, and hits a pitch out to 15, 20 feet, like not that close, like kind of a long putt. But the leaderboard at this time is showing us Adam Scott and Schwartzel tied at 12, Jason Day at 11, Tiger pretty much out of it at 10 and already in the house. But
who are you pulling for at this point, Soly, when you're sitting in your eating?
I think Adam Scott. I think it's so Adam Scott, right? I think that was he was the, you're probably just pulling for the biggest name. Day was not really a name yet. Again, this is his first Masters. Scott, a popular player. I'm definitely rooting for him, I think
I think that was true. Yeah. I definitely was not rooting for Charl Schwartzel. I don't know who was rooting for Charl Schwartzel at this point, other than obviously respect to my fine South African friends.
So Day and Scott are playing together. He's got a 40-footer for birdie on 17. And again, he's 1 back. Do you remember what happens with Jason Day? He steps up and drains a 40-footer and starts staring back down the fairway at Charl Schwartzel. Like this put him at 11 under. This put him within 1, but drains a bomb putt and is like fist pumping and like is looking back down the fairway unmistakably at Schwartzel in the fairway.
This will have some echoes in mind, Soly. Keep it. Okay, we'll put a bookmark on that. Yeah.
So Adam Scott is again, he's sitting at 12 under par, tied for the lead. Has this par putt after hitting it in the bunker. Looks like it's going to slip away. I call this an 18-20 footer probably for par, and he drains it with the long putter. Huge clutch putt. So he's still at 12 under par. That was a huge moment. I mean, the crowds are really into it. Schwartzel's out of position in the right rough, but hits this shot down the elevator shaft, barely over the bunker to the back right pin. It rolls up to about 12 feet. Pours in the putt on 17, third birdie in a row to take the one-shot lead. Adam Scott is aboard on the 18th green, but about 30 feet right of it. Day stuffs it in there tight, but he's two back of Schwartzel now. Schwartzel stripes it on 18, and Adam Scott has a clean look from just right of the hole. Pretty much the same putt he would have 2 years later. Hit a good putt, but it broke too far to the left and missed. He would get his revenge on that putt 2 years later. Day makes his birdie to get to 12 under par. So now Day and Scott need Schwartzel to bogey, but he's in the middle of the fairway on 18. He's getting ready to hit his shot. And I mean, you know how like cameramen get right behind a guy to film, like not crazy close, but you're going to film from the middle of the fairway. He's lining up his shot and he turns to the cameraman and like tells him to back up. Like he's like, and the guy is not close. He's not close at all. He's shooting from pretty far away. Tells him to back up. Cameraman doesn't. So he like tells his caddy, like, get them to back up. And I'm like, it's one time you're like, this dude looks nervous, which of course you would be. You've got to hit one good shot and you're going to win the Masters. But it was kind of a bizarre scene of him asking the cameraman to move. Hits it, 18 feet right of the hole, a different putt from Scott's, though it kind of rolls back towards the front of the green, and it's pretty much over at that point. I mean, he's not going to 3-putt that one. They're expecting 2 putts for the win. Only needs 1. Charl Schwartzel takes the 2011 Masters. 4th birdie in a row, the first person to birdie the last 4 holes and win. It's one of those tournaments that you just look back, like, of course you remember that happening now, but it's easy to forget the level of suspense of what was going to happen in this. It could have gone so many different ways, and this dude just came up and stole it. When people talk about the roars of Augusta, they're talking about the 2011 Masters. Like, there was just shit happening all over the place. Not the biggest name winner, but he did the damn thing. And he goes in to sign his card. I don't know if you can see this in the green room. Hopefully you can't, but you'll never guess who the scorer is when he walks into the scoring tent. It's Mike Davis. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's just, I did not see that one coming.
Was he working I guess you just maybe. Yeah,
he's the head of the USGA at this point, and
that's right. Okay,
I don't know why he's the one tallying up the scores in there, but I just had to laugh about that one. Rory hits it in close on 18, and of course just cleans up this little 5-foot birdie putt. No, of course he did not make this putt. Did not go in. He misses it left and shoots 80.
80. That's right.
Again, worth pausing at this moment. It is a horrific ride, but the story for me is that he goes out and wins the next major by 8 shots at age 21. Like, this could have ruined him, and it may have ruined him for Augusta. We don't know. His interview is shockingly classy. Again, for a 21-year-old, he said, look, in that moment, he's like, obviously I'm going to be disappointed for quite some time, but I got to look at the positives. The positives were I led this tournament for 63 holes. I'm very disappointed, but hopefully it'll build a bit of character in me, which I think we can say unmistakably happened.
This is one of my favorite anecdotes. Do you know how Rory said that he got over this win?
I do not.
By listening to Adele every day in his car.
Seriously?
I'm not even kidding. There's I've talked about this at some point. Maybe it was on a Golfers Journals podcast, but he was asked what tune got you over the hump so that you could win at Congressional later. So this is later, and they asked him. He says, it was Adele. I didn't sing it quite as well as her, but I played it every morning in my car. So the song was stuck in my head during the week of the Congressional.
I have never heard that. Not quite the Quad City DJs. Come on and ride it. Parentheses, the train. But
it's some kind of magic there. Yeah.
Some of the writing that happens afterwards, Joe Poznansky said, a professional golfer cannot hide. This is both the beauty and cruelty of the game. There is no locker room to duck into at halftime, no huddle in which a coach offers encouragement or a solution. There's only the next shot and the waiting scorecard and the bitter emptiness of a golf cup 4.5 inches in diameter. Referencing the when Rory's walking off the 10th hole, he said, McIlroy is still only 2 strokes off the lead, but it is clear that he will not win the Masters. Sure, he tries to convince himself otherwise. If he can birdie the 11th hole, but he misses the 7-foot putt and the minuscule par putt too. Well, then if I can birdie number 12, he misses the birdie, par, and bogey putts, a dreaded 4-putt. He said, I lost my speed, he would say. On the 13th, he snap hooks his drive into the water. He drops his head to his chest. And when he finishes the round with an 80, dropping him to 15th, McIlroy hands his ball to a young fan. He hugs friends. He answers every question with dignity. He said, I thought I'd be okay. He says, trying to find the words that are not there. He had his moment. He wasn't up to it. What words sum that up? He wanders under the oak tree in front of the clubhouse. All around him are cheers.
One of the things I remember that made me laugh, and I think probably made like me another like reason to be a big Roy fan, is someone like tweeted at him like, "Hey, thanks for letting me know that there were actually houses on the property at Augusta. I don't think I," and he like retweeted it and was like, "LOL," like crying emoji. And I was like, man, if you can laugh at that and laugh at yourself, like you're pretty grounded, pretty decent fella. So
This is the same kind of time period in Rory's Twitter is like, Jaeger bombs all night with my friends. It's kind of funny. He's got some funny old tweets that
absolutely.
I don't know. I hope he never goes back and cleans up. But
yeah.
AP says an interesting note. Looking back 13 years later, instead of being compared to Tiger Woods, McIlroy will now forever be linked to. Can you fill in the blank? Of an ironic name of who he will be linked to.
Phil Mickelson.
That is Greg Norman.
Greg Norman. Wow.
The final round score was the worst of a third round leader since Ken Venturi in 1956. That comes from. And then Dan Jenkins, just a footnote tweet from Dan Jenkins said, okay, somebody asked him, for the record, how many more majors does Tiger get? He said, a couple, maybe, if he can get some help from the competition. And I found that quite foreshadowing for 8 years from then, with all the collapses that happened around him, for him to win the 2019 Masters, all the water balls on 12, Molinari getting wet multiple times. I just found that tweet to be especially prescient. That's it for 2011. That is longer than 1980, what I have. It's a lot, but it is a fascinating rewatch, fun rewatch. I hate to say with Rory, but it's just, again, that's part of what makes this tournament what it is the possibility that can happen. And it has done that to many people over the years. And it's a fun one to relive.
It does make me think about, we talked about this, I think recently, there doesn't seem like there's that many collapses anymore, right? Like that era was more prone to collapses, and now maybe like drivers are too big or whatever, that it's just harder to blow a lead. But like the coming of age of your golfing life is like seeing guys like completely fall apart and thinking that's possible. And now like there's often kind of boring Sundays because you can sort of hang in there and shoot 70 and win majors in some ways.
And this is, I'm reaching back for this one, and I don't have a lot to back this up with, but the feeling of watching a lot of these putts, I'd love for somebody to analyze how far putter technology has come in the last 13 years, because it just seems like these 3, 4, and 5 footers that I know they're nervy, and I know like that's the stuff that these guys seem to be able to brush in at a much higher rate than what happened on this day between Tiger and Rory for the most part. Rory had this center shafted putter at the time. Gosh, did it look terrible throughout that entire day. And Tiger's putts just did not come off the putter.
Center shafted putter. Wow.
Yeah. It's really surprising. But it just made me think I'm wondering if like with modern day mallets or whatever has happened with shafts and weighting and all that. And that's kind of been, again, I might be talking out of my ass on that, but watching this was kind of like, I would not be putting with that at the Masters. That does not look good.
I bet people who are designing putters would say, oh yeah, putters are way better right now.
Yeah. We all know golf is booming. Tee times can be a little hard to get these days. I'm not the best at planning this stuff out in advance. I usually, I'm a day in advance. Maybe we can play tomorrow, but you got to be organized. You got to be ready to act quick. You got to hit that 7-day window if that's what your golf course is challenging you with. And when you want the best, you have to act quickly or someone else will get it instead. It's like if you're hiring for your business, you want to find the most talented people for your open roles before the competition scoops them up. So the best way to do that, ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter finds qualified candidates fast. And right now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/NLU. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology takes center stage to identify top talent for your roles. Immediately after posting your job, ZipRecruiter's smart technology starts showing you qualified people for it. Amp up your hiring performance with ZipRecruiter. Find the best fast. See why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/NLU. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/NLU. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Back to the pod.
All right, Soly, I want to take you back to 1977, the 41st playing of the Masters. This is kind of in the era when people are starting to hint that like, oh, Jack, he's the greatest, there's no disputing that, but maybe he's past his prime. They don't want to come quite out and say it, but they're not going to lay down and give him titles anymore, which is really
Is he coming
funny.
off? Didn't he win in
He won in
76?
75. No, 75 was
75.
he won 2 majors, but he didn't win in 76.
Got it.
He's got 14 majors at this point. He's, at the back then they're still counting his his US AMs, so he's got more majors than he gets to count now. But he's sort of feeling like, he's got some other interests. He's already kind of the all-time leading major winner, having, and so he's feeling like, okay, like, maybe this is it's not quite my era of dominance anymore. Which is funny because like in 1976, in his down year at the majors, he finished T3, T11, T2, T4 in the majors. Just doesn't, can't do it anymore. I just want to pause here for a minute and talk a little bit about Jack Nicklaus's majors record in the 1970s, which
Oh my God.
we have talked about, I think, many times, but I still feel like is worth reviewing. At this point, Soly, into the 1977 Masters, in the last 28 majors, Jack has finished in the top 10 24 times.
I would have guessed higher.
In only 4 majors in the entire first 7 years of the 70s does he miss the top 10 in majors. It's got to be like, I know we talk a lot about the 18 majors and we talk a lot about Tiger's cut streak and whatever. It's just still like the most bonkers stretch of like great golf over a sustained period, I think, ever. Other than if we're getting specific about the Masters, from 1963 to 1966, Jack's record in those 4 Masters were first, second, first. Like he didn't finish his like Porter always does that thing, like his average finish was like 1.3 or whatever of those Masters. In the 70s, he won 7 majors during that stretch. It's just kind of like, these are his finishes in the Masters, just the Masters in the 70s. 8, T2, first, T3, T4, first, T3. So this is setting the stage for what I thought was a little bit surprised to learn in the research. People saying like, well, he's not quite the dude that he once was. So Hale Irwin says in the pre-lead up to the tournament, Jack's presence is still known, but his dominance is not felt so much anymore. It's not that Jack's not playing well. The other players are just better now. They're not afraid. They don't take a backseat to press releases. You could put 25 names in a hat and pick any of them out. You'd be nuts to call anyone the favorite. So, Jack's not like a shit talker, but he kind of hears a little bit of this. He's obviously, well, guys don't think I can play anymore. He's playing a few casual rounds.
Barbara, write that down.
Apparently, back then, I did not know this. I'm super jealous of this. I think the writers were kind of allowed to like, basically, like either this or it's either the writers were allowed to walk like with the players during practice rounds, or Jack was like walking to the ropes and talking to the writers while he was playing practice rounds, because there's a bunch of stories about how he kind of has like a running dialogue with the writers. And he tells this story, Soly, about how he'd come to Augusta a week before to sort of get ready for the tournament. And he's telling a story to Ken Dillinger of the Washington Post. And he says he walked up to the 13th green and there was a live water moccasin on the bank. And he says, and when I got there, there were 2 more. I don't know whether water moccasins make love or not, but those two sure were intertwined. This is the lead anecdote in a story about Jack Nicklaus being back at the Masters, was 2 snakes making love on the 13th green.
Augusta having poisonous snakes?
Apparently, it shocked me that maybe they just kind of eradicated snakes, period. But I've never heard about like poisonous snakes like hanging out on an Amen corner. Yeah, and Jack, saying that they're making love. It just snakes love each other. It's great. Nicklaus is kind of a little bit amused at he says to the writers that at the lengths that Augusta will go to make Augusta Eden-like, including putting blue dye in the water and a special green mixture of sand and dirt that people sprinkle in divots. And he shares a story about how he thinks the officials are sort of sillier and slyer than they thought, because the day before. I think this TC will approve of this because it fits in with his what he thought the Ryder Cup strategy was going to be at Marco Simone. The day before, he says you could hit out of the creek that fronts the green. He's talking about 1976 because there wasn't any water there. Then on the night before the tournament, they dammed the green up. Only they didn't tell us. So the guys were going for the green and finding their balls in the water or they're wet when they thought they should have been dry. Which I'm totally in favor of this in the future. Like this, like practice rounds are like a crapshoot. You don't know what whether the water's going to run through Ray's Creek or not. You take your chances. Get your caddy out there walking the course before. This is another great Nicklaus anecdote. So this is where I think he's like talking with the riders on the rope line because there's some sort of action. You'll see he's doing, Jack Nicklaus is doing an impression, for all of you who hate my impressions, so I know that Jack does impressions too, of Ben Wright, the English announcer. And he says, well, as Ben Wright would say, he's got a wedge in his hand. It's the weakest part of his game. He's got a tendency to hit it fat. And then Nicklaus like takes a big smack and he goes, you know what? He's right. Just self-deprecating Jack doing Ben Wright would pay much money for that. Tom Weiskopf also kind of one of the favorites because he's finished second here 4 times. But at this point, he's got the reputation for being kind of a dick, like a super cantankerous with the press. So Nicklaus, I said he was practicing in Augusta the week before, and the press asked Tom why he didn't deploy that similar strategy. And Weiskopf said, well, some of us don't have 10 million in our pockets, so we have to go play Greensboro. Yeah. So they asked him, like, kind of like asking
also,
Weiskopf, like,
Jack may not have had 10 million in his pockets.
Yeah, exactly. He may have like lost it all in whatever was a cryptocurrency scam back then. So the press is kind of asking Weiskopf, like, hey, how come you're kind of a dick? And he's like, I've never been temperamental and moody. I'm easygoing. It's just when I'm playing bad, I can't stand mediocrity. I care about what people think of me, but the only person who knows me is me, and I've never found myself to be a temperamental guy. Which Weiskopf then when later like join the broadcast and be a part of like talking about other players, which is, I appreciate like that Weiskopf was super honest and kind of a truth teller back in the day.
I mean, it's well known, but if you don't know, the iconic call in 1986 of Jack's shot into 16 is from Tom Weiskopf. It is truly, I mean, just a masterclass in like setting up a dramatic moment and leading right into it. This is your moment. I don't know the exact line. This is your moment. This is your destiny. It's one of the greatest shots of all. It's bone chilling. It's awesome.
Yeah. So also talked about, but not quite as much, is young Tom Watson, 27-year-old Tom Watson, who everyone at this point in his career is Soly calling a flat out choker. He is basically like, people think, if you think that like Xander has it difficult today, people saying like, oh, you can't get it done on Sundays, you have no idea what it was like for Tom Watson in the 70s. I mean, this will come up here as we move along, but every single question that Tom Watson gets is basically about like, well, how come you can't handle the pressure on Sundays? And at this point, he's already won a major. He won the British Open like 2 years prior, but he blew a lead at Winged Foot on the final day when Hale Irwin won. He had blown like tournaments coming into this year. He'd won twice earlier this year, but he had blown the Players and Heritage after having Sunday leads. And so people were basically like, oh, this guy, like he thinks too much. There's a lot of talk about how the Tom Watson should use his Stanford psychology degree to actually help him think his way around out there, but maybe he thinks too much. So it's very funny to see like just people like just kind of like flat out shitting on him. Byron Nelson's is like sticking up for Tom. He's kind of taken Watson under his wing as a mentor. He says, Tom is a good player. He's like Byron Nelson, like having coffee, like sitting there talking to writers, like, God, I wish I had been in this era of like the old timers just kind of hanging out on the patio, like, telling stories with the press. Dan Jenkins, yucking it up, probably drinking with Byron Nelson. But he says, Tom Watson's a good player, but he needs encouragement when he's not playing well. I don't like to use the word choking. That's too strong a word. I don't like that definition because it's degrading. Nobody's going to win them all. Also of note, Lee Elder is playing in this Masters for the second time. He had qualified by winning the Houston Open this year. Much less fanfare than when he played for the first time in 75, which Lee is like super happy about. He says, I'm Lee Elder, the golfer now, and not a freak, which was kind of a pretty compelling quote. This is also the first tournament, first Masters ever held without Clifford Roberts as the chairman. Roberts retired and handed the reins to William Lane, and apparently was, at this point, he's 84 years old, not in great health, could could basically not get out of bed most days, and so he was watching the Masters from home. Round one, Hubert Green is our first round leader after shooting an opening round 5 under 67. He would not hang on to the lead, obviously, but this would be sort of a memorable year for Green. This is, of course, the same year that he led going into the final round at Southern Hills and was told that someone had called in a death threat and they were going to kill him during the final round, but he ended up winning anyway. Don January and Billy Kratzert are tied with 3 under. Kratzert, excuse me, at 69. Defending champion Ray Floyd shoots a 171, and he says afterwards that he thinks because he set the scoring record of the Masters the previous year, the tournament committee was really out to fuck him this year. He doesn't use the F word, but he says conditions were the toughest I can ever remember for a first round. Floyd said, the pin placements I saw, I've never seen in my 13 years. I kept saying to my caddy, boy, they're after me. They're really out to get us. The original Patrick Reed, Ray Floyd.
Fast forwarding to 1980 is going to be the next one. Like the talk was leading up to it was always about the scoring and the record. Like that there's some stuff that comes up in 1980 too of like, that's going to be so. Ray Floyd is talking about like, I mean, it's going to be too soft. The record might come down this year. Like he was clearly very proud of his record that he set at Augusta.
Hell yeah. Nicklaus opens with an even par 72. He's frustrated with his putting. Tom Watson quietly shoots a 2 under 70. In round two, Tom Watson surges into a tie for the lead with a 69. He's tied with, if I give you his first name, Soly, could you guess his second name? Rod?
I would say Pampling, but that doesn't work with the timeline. That's the only Rod
Funseth, who shoots the second round 67.
It's not a real person.
Yeah, exactly. Gary Nunn of the New York Daily News says, yes, it's 2 days early, but this is to prepare you for another one of those shocks the Masters Golf Tournament is so fond of delivering. This is to prepare you for Rod Funseth. No, Funseth is not the disease that grows between your toes. That's fungus. This is Funseth. Funseth, a golfer, a man, a Masters co-leader.
Can we so right here's a great point to pause and just I struggle with this whole concept of what Nicklaus and all these guys did is incredible. Mm-hmm. But if you want to understand why, there's so much yellow in that Wikipedia in the 1970s.
Plumbers
this is why. Yeah. This is the plumbers and firemen era. It's not the same development of professional golf, and it was way easier to stand out amongst your peers in that era of technology, that era of athlete. Like that's really not debatable, really, at this point. The money that hadn't flowed into the game yet, and it was not recruiting the best athletes. And it is a plumbers and firemen era. We have to say that.
I don't see any lies there, Soly. Rod Funseth is 44 years old at this point, and he is not exactly the most apparent person who does not believe that Rod Funseth is going to win the Masters is Rod Funseth, because he says to the press afterwards, have you heard about the book that I'm going to write? The title is The Power of Negative Thinking. If you're thinking bad, consider how wonderful you'll feel when something good happens. Cheer up, think bad.
The mental miss for Big Randy.
Yeah. Weirdly, like Funseth is super talented. It just hasn't paid off that much. At this point, I did not know this. This is maybe I should be ashamed of not knowing this for a guy who held these records, but he held the course record at Pebble Beach. He held the course record at Riviera and the course record at Muirfield. Doesn't hold any of those anymore, but obviously like a pretty talented player. That's a pretty good trio of things. He says, but this is after the negative thinking quote, my putter fails me all the time and I fall apart. I always seem to fall apart. I guess in a way it's frustrating to see what you can shoot, only to see what you actually shoot. I guess I've just always been a very poor putter. He says, listen, if I happen to win the Masters, they wouldn't even have a coat to fit me. I'm just going to go out there and try not to embarrass myself.
I need to see a picture of this guy. This is Funseth. What's his first name again?
Rod. So Watson could have held the outright lead after 36 holes, but he bogeyed 18, which led the writers to joke, look at Tom Watson. He's even getting good at blowing 36-hole leads. He's asked in the press tent afterwards, hey, does it irritate you to be asked about choking? No, Watson says, because I expect it. It's not true, but I know I'm going to be asked about it. They asked him, who do you fear? What do you fear over the most over the last 36 holes? Myself, Tom Watson says. Only 2 shots back at this point is Australian Bob Shearer, who told the press after his round that he nearly died a month ago of an acute pancreatitis. He felt ill in Myrtle Beach, and a doctor told him, "You're right on the edge of death." He put me in a hospital, Shearer said, and I had so many tubes running out of me, I felt like a dog on a leash. I couldn't move 4 or 5 feet. A Friday, to keep his sugar in his blood, he drank 10 Cokes and ate 3 candy bars during his rounds. This is top level medicine here, I'm sure.
What athletes these guys are.
He also stated that right before the round, he got a shot of vitamin B right in the backside. Apparently, he said, "My pancreas still isn't working right." Nicklaus at this point is lurking 3 shots back. Another amazing anecdote that I found, and this is what I wanted to bring up. Arnold Palmer's 43 years old at this point. It looked like he was going to miss the cut after an opening round 76, but he surged back on Friday and he made an eagle to make the cut. He's basically like Tiger at this point. He's got huge crowds following everywhere he goes. They really don't care what he shoots. They just want to sort of be, I mean, look at this handsome motherfucker. He is just, the epitome of like Americana at this point. But here's the anecdote I love. After Arnie talked to the press about his round, he was leaving the press center and he got stopped by a security guard who demanded to see his badge. Being Arnold Palmer, he didn't have one. The security guard grabbed him and started to push him outside. And Arnie looked like he was ready to fight. At the last second, the guard realized who he was and stood down. Arnie turned to the press and said, "You almost had a hell of a story there with my fist and somebody's nose." I would have loved to see Arnie just clock a security guard and see how that would play out in Augusta. So Ben Crenshaw at this point in round 3, start round 3, is kind of making himself known. He's kind of thought of as like the next Jack Nicklaus at this point. A lot of her papers are referring to him as Jack's protege. Everyone loves how he kind of like overpowers courses and he just putts like a dream. In fact, he's
Crenshaw
kind of
overpowers golf
he
courses.
totally was like an overpowering guy. Yeah. It's people are sort of thinking like he's annoyed that he's like kind of a putting wizard. I think actually the historical comp is much better. That is Jordan Spieth, because apparently Crenshaw like hits it long and then hits it wild and just gets up and down from everywhere. And he's kind of pissy that people don't think that like they think that like his putting magic is going to fade at some point. He's not actually going to be able to hang in there. He shoots a 69 to get to 7 under, and he's tied with Watson at 7 under at the end of the day. Rick Massengale shoots 6 under. And Jim Colbert and Jack Nicklaus are at 4 under. And again, in the press 10 afterwards, we've returned to the theme of Tom Watson choking. This is an exchange that he had with the press on Saturday night. "Hey, Tom, wouldn't you rather be coming from behind rather than leading?" Watson smiled. "No," he said, "I'd rather lead than not be leading." A minute later, someone said, "Considering you had a 41 on the back 9 on Sunday at the TPC, don't you think you choked?" Watson smiled. "No, I wasn't swinging well at TPC." "Do you get mad when somebody asks if you choke?" "No." And he smiled just to prove he wasn't mad. "Well, did you choke?" "No, I didn't believe in my swing." When you don't believe in your swing, you don't have the confidence in your swing. It can break down under pressure. He paused and then explained, "Everybody chokes. I choke. Everybody does. When you're swinging well, you don't choke as bad as when you're swinging badly." So
So did he? Sounds like he talked himself into the fact that he was choking. But
everybody chokes. God, I'm probably going to choke tomorrow. So, Soly, Crenshaw and Watson they're tied for the lead, right? You'd assume that they would be paired together, right, in the final day. You would be incorrect. Back then, the Masters did whatever the fuck they wanted. All right, they pair Tom Watson with Rick Massengale, and then in this last group, and then put Nicklaus and Crenshaw into the second to the last group. So just Nicklaus is actually kind of annoyed about this. Like he says, Ben, it's later after the round, he says, "Ben has every right to be upset with the pairing. The tournament is the only one that makes such pairings up like this on the final day. By right, Ben should have been paired with Jim Colbert. It was an advantage for me to be paired with him because if I'm paired with one of the leaders, I know who I have to take out along the way. Not that anyone should be afraid to play with me, but it's harder for some kid to win his first major when he's paired with me. I feel sorry for Ben." Which I kind of like hilarious to me that the Masters could be like, "Yeah, whatever. We're gonna go ahead and do what we want. We want Nicklaus and Crenshaw in a shootout together." I guess it was like the speculation was that it was sort of a made for TV thing because it was like Crenshaw was the up and comer, like the next Nicklaus, and people wanted to see a throwdown.
I think that you should be able to do this if it's a tie. Like instead of like defaulting to a tiebreaker of who finished first
Fish
being
first.
what, like if you want to make if you're tied and it doesn't really matter, but I just hate that it goes off of order of when you finished as a tiebreaker. If you want to play God of like these three guys are tied, but man, is it going to be more interesting if Tiger and Phil are paired together in this final round? Like go for that. That's good entertainment, I think.
Sure.
But what you're describing, but around this time too, like I don't know if they would mess with the pairings, but or maybe this happens even a lot later. Like they would move Arnie to like the group
The
behind the
window. Oh, really?
leaders to be like even when he was out of it. I remember one of these we did. I forget what year it was. I think Oak Hill or something. They put him like the last group behind the leaders, and more people were following that than the leaders, just because they wanted him to play on TV as well.
Sick. Let's go. You know what? Let's throw the chaos in back to this day. I mean, it just makes me laugh that Crenshaw literally he was the first in at 7 under and didn't even make into the final pairing. So just got lapped. So, but at this point, again, back to the theme that Nicklaus is not quite that dude. Crenshaw gives a quote that will sort of haunt him throughout, at least in the broadcast throughout the day. He said, "We, the other players, are aware of Nicklaus's presence if he shoots what he's capable of shooting, but he's going to have to play good on Sunday. We are not as scared of him as we used to be." Venturi will go over this quote about 5 times during the broadcast. Oh, I bet he wishes he didn't say that. So on Sunday, Jack comes out firing and makes 3 birdies on the front 9, but he actually loses ground to Tom Watson and Rick Massengale, who make 4 birdies on the front 9. Watson makes a turn leading by 1 over Massengale and 4 over Nicklaus. And this is where TV coverage picks up. Back then, we are, of course, only getting the back 9. And so Nicklaus hits, I'm not kidding, an unbelievably good shot into 10 and has this birdie putt for to hit it to that close on 10 is pretty incredible. He makes that birdie, and so now the margin is just 2. And Watson hits his shot into 10, pretty decent. Poor shot into the left bunker, hits a really good chip to about 3 feet. Misses the putt. Soly cannot like make it. All of a sudden, like
The choking,
started coming on. People are talking about. One of the things that makes me laugh throughout this thing is how much the writers love to talk about Tom Watson and love to talk about how he looks like Huck Finn for some reason. There's about 10 references about how he looks like Huck Finn. I'm not sure I know what Huck Finn looks like. I've read it way back in the day, but not sure why Tom Watson was the person that they compared it to. So.
Is it a fictional character? Like,
yes,
was it a
in
movie
a
at this
novel.
point, or just
no,
a book? I was gonna say it's just a book.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess you could just invent that Tom Watson looked like him anyway. Nicklaus is really, he's turning on the heat. Whatever he parsed 11, but I want to get to this here. It's literally one of my. I want people to go look at this on YouTube thing because Nicklaus hits an unbelievable shot into 12, probably. I want to say it's like 7 or 8 feet, and he rolls in a putt. And his caddy, Willie Peterson, this is the era when caddies are so animated. This is what he does as the ball is going in. He is in between the hole of Jack, and he's jumping in the air and whipping his towel around. You cannot tell me like this wouldn't be an enormous like scandal in this current era if that happened.
You just don't do that.
It's just regular behavior by the caddies back then, and I think, frankly, we need to go back to this because it is incredible. So
it's not going to make my story, but there's one in my part in 80 where a caddy is like walking in a putt on 16 for one of the players. I don't remember who it is, and maybe it does make my part, but he just gives a whole like like a devastated reaction. It's like, God, if my caddy did that, I'd be a little upset.
If you ever want to like have an enjoyable watch and just see like the caddies back then, they had like amazing like afros and mutton chops, and they dressed like they were all the way down like the V-neck of their shirts, obviously not wearing shirts underneath because it's so hot. And they would just like they would sit on top of the golf bags next to things, and they would absolutely like pump their fists and jump in the air. It was an incredible era for style. So this is sort of a silly thing, but Tom Watson on 11, he hits it right of 11. He has like a bug on his ball, and he cannot get this bug off. He spends, not kidding, like a full 45 seconds or a minute, like waving just bug away, and the bug will not leave. And he just finally was like, all right. And he just hits the ball hits the bug. Like the bug is like, he just squashes the bug against the ball, rolls it up. and makes par there. So after Nicklaus made his birdie at 12, he's now only a shot back. And so all of a sudden, like the crowd is going bonkers. Like the roars you can see every look on Watson's face every time Nicklaus makes a birdie. They cut to Watson and he's trying to sort of stay cool. For some reason, I feel like we need to talk to the Masters about this. The official feed cuts here. So we don't get to see like Nicklaus play 13, 14, or 15, which is like crushing because of what happens. The YouTube feed just cuts back, and I think my conspiracy theory in me is because of what happens next. Nicklaus birdies 13 while Watson is back in 13 fairway, and Watson, he kind of like puts his arm up. Apparently, this is from reading from Dan Jenkins, reading from various sort of things, and we'll discuss it later. Watson thinks that Nicklaus is taunting him. He thinks that he is talking shit, that he's like, hey, go ahead and top that. And it makes Watson piss off. So Watson gets the lead back after he birdies 13. He's like fired up at this point. I don't know what shot he hit into 13 because we don't have any footage of it. Nicklaus pars 14. We come back, coverage comes back where Nicklaus almost chips in for 15 at eagle. He just hit it long, but he hits an incredible chip. It's sort of like a take that, Ben Wright, for talking shit about my short game. Just barely misses it, makes birdie. Now, Nicklaus is the outright leader at 11, but Watson punches back at this point. He birdies 15, tied 11. So even the fans who want Watson to win at this point think that he's probably going to blow it, because as he says, as he's walking to 16, somebody leans over the rope line and says, love you, man, but don't choke. It's just brutal. Rick Massengale, pretty stalled at this point. He's 8 under, but he's kind of out of it. So
you don't say.
Yeah, you don't say. On 16, Nicklaus hits it into the crowd, Soly, like really? Just like way left. It lands, it ends up kind of bounces or ping pongs around in the crowd and lands on some woman's blanket. And there's like a 3-minute discussion about what kind of drop he's going to take. And so finally, like they pick up the blanket and have Nicklaus do the drop. He does the drop over the back of his shoulder, which I feel like I would love if we could bring back. That was awesome. At this point, like Venturi just keeps bringing up he majored in psychology at Stanford. And boy, he got to be able to find his way to think his way through this final round.
Did they do the sports psychologist go to see him to learn from him? They do that line? That's one of my favorites about Nicklaus.
So Dave Anderson of the New York Times says at this point, perhaps he's just writing in the sort of Sunday setup from Saturday's thing. Perhaps Tom Watson is too smart. Many of the young golfers on tour never studied anything in college except greens. When they play golf, they don't think, they react. With his reddish brown hair and freckled face, Tom Watson resembles Huck Finn with a sand wedge and a diploma. So Jack makes par on 16, drives it way left on 17. Meanwhile, back on 16, Watson hits a really good shot into 16, but just misses the birdie putt. So tension is high here. It's a match play situation here, Soly, as you might expect, even though they're not in the same group. Nicklaus hits a really, he pulled it way left of the Eisenhower tree, but he hits an incredible shot to 15 feet from way over there. And he's got a putt probably about 20 feet that I think he thinks that he makes briefly. Like he kind of starts to lean forward, but it just drifts a little bit left. And so he's like, all right, still, tied for the lead at this point, probably going to get into a playoff. I'm not going to have to do anything dramatic on 18. Hits a good drive on 18. Watson and Massengale both hit it pretty similar to each other. This is Rick Massengale, by the way. I just want you to see this absolute trip.
That's incredible.
And also this is Tom Kite.
Oh my God, Tom Kite! Look at that collar. That's Jerry Colangelo collar.
That's a normal collar. So find a new slant. Massengale and Watson are kind of right even with each other in 17 fairway. Massengale hits a really good shot to about 10 feet. And Watson goes over literally 20 feet and looks in Massengale's bag to see what he hit. Oh, totally okay. Doesn't ask him, doesn't say anything to him, but you're allowed to sort of look or whatever. And then Watson hits a really good shot to I think just probably 15 feet right of the pin. Pin's kind of left center of the green, but there's enough space for Watson to kind of, sneak one in there. So Watson's got a tricky putt and he absolutely drips it in and gives this fist pump full like side uppercut. I'd say it rivals like anything that Tiger ever threw in terms of an uppercut. Just absolutely totally pumped up, thinks at this point like, okay, I've just basically sent back. I mean, he's still pissed off at Nicklaus at this point. He thinks that Jack has been talking shit. So Nicklaus later, he says, he's on 18T at this point, hits his drive, and then here's the roar. And he says, mentally, I was not prepared for it. I did not think Tom was going to make a birdie. So he knows, Nicklaus now, he's one down, that he needs a birdie. And his original plan from where he was in 18 fairway was to hit like a 6-iron to the middle of the green or the back of the green and sort of give himself a putt, but obviously like put himself in a position to make a playoff. He decides, okay, well, I've got to hit, now I got to get it close to the pin because Watson just made birdie. He's kind of in between clubs. He decides to hit a soft 6. He hates, like, he's like, I hate hitting a soft shot under pressure because and he doesn't have a great lie. Comes up, it one hops into the front bunker. I mean, it is so fat. We think of Jack having never missed like any shots under pressure, but this was not exactly like a great swing down the stretch. Hits a decent chip out of there, but cannot get up and down. And so he makes bogey on 18. Watson is in the fairway as this is going on. You can see him turn to someone and say, what was that for? He thinks Jack has just made par because he didn't sort of, and someone says, oh, that was for bogey. And you can see Watson go, let's go. Just pumps up.
Really?
Yeah. So Watson hits it just right of the pin on 18. It looks like it's totally, Massengale hits it inside of him. But again, this is like a different era of etiquette because Massengale has probably like a 10-footer. Watson has a 20-footer. Massengale goes ahead and putts out a turn, and then like he leaves himself a 3-footer, and instead of marking it, even though he's tied for third and probably going to make $28,000 or something at this point if he makes it, he goes ahead and just putts out and lets the stage for Tom. And so this is Vin Scully's call as Watson is lining up his putt on 18. He's had to fight off some slurs about the fact that he's choked. This is his answer to all those critics.
How do you have a Vin Scully in your arsenal too?
Solly, I just try my best.
Did you practice that? Did you do any practice of that one?
No, I did not. I may have done Vin Scully in the past amongst my friends. But,
that was really good.
Thank you. So we go into the into Butler Cabin for Tom Watson has won the Masters. We go into the Butler Cabin for the Green Jacket ceremony, and Chairman William Lane is the new Augusta chairman. He looks directly into the camera. Says, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Clifford Roberts, our chairman of 40 years. Cliff, I know you're watching, and at the risk of losing my green coat, I'd like to express to you on behalf of the Masters Committee our deep appreciation for your 40 years of creation, imagination, management that has made the Masters one of the most successful sporting events in the world. Watson sits down on the couch. They've already interviewed Nicklaus at this point, and he sort of explained about how he had to hit a soft 6 or whatever. Nicklaus is right next to him on the couch in Butler Cabin. And the first thing Watson says is, I have to apologize to Jack for what I said on 18. I felt that when he made his birdie on 13, I thought he was waving back at me to say, hey, top that. And I do apologize. Apparently, like Watson, as he was walking off 18 green and having just like won the Masters, like motherfucks Nicklaus at this point. It's basically
really?
Like, now, yeah, like Jack, you should not have done that. That was totally uncool. And Nicklaus is like, what the fuck? I don't know what's going on. And Nicklaus, like, very classy.
Can you believe this guy?
Guy said I was taunting him. Nicklaus said he was waving to the crowd after he made his birdie on 13. He was not trying to talk trash to Nicklaus. And so he slaps Watson on the knee and says, oh, it's okay. Nobody. And Watson is kind of much apologetic. Ray Floyd puts the jacket on Tom Watson, and the jacket is like 3 sizes too big. Like, it looks like he is just wearing his dad's jacket. But Watson has answered his critics and no longer as a choker. Obviously, will go on to win many more majors, including another Masters. If they would have gone to a playoff, it would have been the first time in Masters history that Masters had a sudden death playoff. And the playoff hole would have been number 1. That's what they had pre-decided that they were going to play. Later in this year, Nicklaus will become the first player to surpass $3 million in career earnings. Obviously, like what you get for finishing second at various tournaments this year. But the reason I brought up the Clifford Roberts stuff, in September of this year, Clifford Roberts will show up at the club one morning, go get his haircut, get dressed in his new pajamas, walk down by the water where the par 3 course is, and shoot himself in the head. Somehow the gun ended up in an auction for golf memorabilia, going up for sale for $15,000, which Augusta quickly bought the gun so to keep it off the black market for just weirdos and sickos. Lee Elder finished 19th, despite a first around 76. Back then, you could get into the following tournament if you were in the top 24. And then later that summer, of course, Nicklaus would have his duel in the sun with Tom Watson, where Watson would outlast him at Turnberry. Pretty incredible stretch of majors for these two guys. As the changing of the guard truly would sort of happen as Tom Watson outdueled him not only once but twice. Another anecdote that shocked me that I found later this year, Nicklaus would win the Memorial for the first time, his own tournament. He was so overcome by emotion that he told Barbara that he was going to retire on the spot, that he didn't want to, he thought that was the best way he could go out, that it meant as much, if not more to him as any of his majors, winning his own tournament. Barbara talked him out of it, and he would go on to win 4 more majors.
I meant to say this earlier, but like I always have to laugh at like, oh, Nicklaus passed his prime, passed his peak. 21 years later, he top 10 in the Masters. Finished like T6 in 1998. Still my favorite fact, whatever. Maybe it was T8, whatever it was.
Yep.
21 years later was still somewhat competitive in the Masters. It's just absolutely remarkable.
This is Dan Jenkins writing in Sports Illustrated about what was most different last Sunday was Tom Watson himself. He was just about the guttiest golfer anyone had ever seen. He was under the most excruciating pressure from the first tee to the next to last putt. On every hole, standing over every single shot, he was the Tom Watson who was supposed to think up a hook, a slice, a shank, anything outrageous, take himself out of these things. But for 4 long, thrilling hours, all he did was fire a round of golf so unexpectedly brilliant that he not only won the Masters for the second major championship of his career, he also scored a clean knockout over Jack Nicklaus.
How many Masters did Watson win?
2 Masters, a U.S. Open, and then 6 British Opens.
Just
right, or
5
British Opens. Should have won 6.
6.
Sorry. We're counting that one. It's like we count those majors for Spieth. Like we're just going to count that one.
A quick break here to give a shout out to a new sponsor of No Laying Up. That is, of course, Mizuho. If you do not know who Mizuho is, they are a top global corporate and investment bank. They are a powerhouse in Japan. The Americas is the fastest growing region for Mizuho globally. They only have institutional businesses in the America. If you're an avid golf watcher, you might have seen a few of their commercials featuring Michelle Wee West. There's one on the Mizuho's trading floor, golf ball travels illustrating different deals, or the one with her caddy. The caddy, like Mizuho, provides expert advice and solutions to their clients. They are also the title sponsor of the Mizuho Americas Open. They're doing some fantastic things in golf, particularly in ladies golf. This year, May 16th through 19th at Liberty National, there'll be amateurs playing with pros. They've increased the purse of that event to $3 million. They cover player accommodations. They have a full-day leadership summit for young girls. They have a partnership with Girls Inc. That is all Mizuho. So you may not know the name yet. You likely will know many of the name brand companies they have helped, projects they have funded, events they support. Thank you to Mizuho, who is now supporting our content as well, and for all they're doing in the world of golf. For more information, visit MizuhoAmericas.com. Again, for more information, visit MizuhoAmericas.com. Now back to the Masters Deep Dive.
All right, Kev, that brings us to 1980. I know this will be a much, much shorter effort for me than the previous version, because I was kind of hoping 1980 was a little bit more interesting than it was. I mean, it does sound like it was interesting. The YouTube broadcast, not so much. We'll get into that. It's kind of lacking on the YouTube channel of what's remaining there. I'm wondering, similar to what you were talking about in '77. I'm wondering why that is. Like, do they not have access to some of the footage or what it is? But we'll get to some of that. As I teased earlier, sprinted up the stairs. A lot of lead up hype about Ray Floyd. An article is written in the Independent Record about how now he's a family man. I just found this interestingly documented. He said, "If I had to do it all over again, this is the way I'd want it," said the one-time notorious playboy, a swinger more off the links than on it, a bachelor for whom golf was merely a way station en route to the fun set. Said after finishing a round, he would whiz past the practice tee in a rush to change into a tuxedo. He was seen in the smart places. He dated the prettiest dolls in town, Hugh Hefner's Playboy bunnies, debutantes and starlets. He swung. He said, "The only time I worked on my game was when I got short in the bank, and that was often. If I hadn't been blessed with some natural talent, I wouldn't have lasted 3 years on tour.
Anybody who thinks like it's harder now with technology and the press or whatever, fine, sure. But like writers back then would just straight up make innuendo about, hey, this dude's laying pipe all over town. Like he is just absolute any doll who's coming around his Motel 6 at night, they're walking home bow-legged, by God. That's just how it is. I mean, the writers just didn't give a fuck. They would just say that shit.
Especially in golf culture. Like even
Yes.
even some of Dan Jenkins' writing it back into the 2010s was a little bit like, yeah, I don't know about that. But on Thursday, Tom Weisskopf makes a 13th on the and Dan Jenkins writes, Weisskopf at the 12th was a splendid sight for any recreational player who has trouble with his short irons or wedges. On Thursday, he kept trying to nip a wedge over the creek, and the ball kept going into the water. He would hit a shot, then hold his hand out for the caddy to hand him another ball to drop. 5 balls went in on Thursday. On Friday, he put 2 more in the drink. Seve Ballesteros gets out to a tie for the lead with David Graham and Jeff Mitchell. There would be a lot of names, no names, I should say, that kind of filter through the leaderboard. A lot is written about that, about the troubled state that American golf might be in at this point, as the 23-year-old Seve is gonna romp to a victory here. But on Friday, Dan Jenkins writes, one of the more exciting moments occurred long before Ballesteros' escapades on Amen Corner. On Friday, he hit the biggest hook in the history of leftward trajectories at the 17th hole, and his ball wound up on the 7th green, roughly the equivalent of aiming at Kansas from New York and hitting Mississippi. The result, however, was another birdie for Seve. He took his free drop off the putting surface on the 7th, hit a towering blind iron shot that landed 15 feet from the flag at the 17th, and ran home the putt and threw his cap in the air the way Palmer used to.
I kept trying to think of like the logistics of being on 7 green from 17T. That is like a 60-yard like dead pull hook, like,
and making birdie. That's quite the image. Seve's 23 years old at this point. He has he's playing in his 4th Masters. His prior Masters finishes are T33, T18, T12, so he is gaining on it. He's not playing much in the United States at this time. He talks a little bit about not liking playing in the United States a little bit afterward, but the Sunday morning paper, as he takes the lead into the final round, it's he shoots 66-69. He's got a 4-shot lead after 2 rounds over Rex Caldwell and David Graham. And then after the 3rd round, he is 13 under par, has a 7-shot lead over Ed Fiore, the gripper. So he shoots 66, 69, 68. And the Sunday morning paper is singing Seve's praises, saying he's expected to establish himself as the new master of professional golf. The lead was the 2nd biggest ever, only to Ray Floyd's lead. And then the broadcast on YouTube, it opens up, and the first like 46 minutes are with no announcers. It's just like cameras from behind the greens, almost like an isolated feed of some kind, no announcers. Part of me wonders like if there's just like commentary that they were not comfortable with having out there at this point. I really don't know what it is. And you don't see any of Seve's shots until he gets to I'll get to that. But basically, Seve gets out to a 10-shot lead at one point in this round. He gets to, he birdies the 1st, he birdies the 3rd, he birdies the 5th. He's 16 under par, and you can't exactly quite tell, who's in second at that point, but it's a 10-shot lead. And he gets to the turn, and he bogeys the 10th hole. He makes a double bogey on the 12th and bogeys the 13th, and the lead is down to 3. So from a 10-shot lead all the way down to a 3-shot lead, and we'll get into some of that. But
just to comment on your camera thing, I noticed that in the 77 broadcast is basically like it's clear that the cameras were not allowed to be inside the ropes in any sense. Like I don't know whether this changed after Clifford Roberts passed away or whatever, but all the shots of like Watson are from either the towers or like they'll shoot like through trees. Like you'll see literal like tree branches in the shot, but you never get any like super close-ups that we get now of like the camera person walking, like you talked about with Schwartzel. Like that would never happen back in 77.
Well, and some of the clips I could see from this as well had golf carts out and about, but everything was done via cable. Like there was no remote sending of a broadcast feed. So there was like a cable, like a literal cable tied to the camera that's like strung out from the golf carts to get the cameras around. And like, honestly, during this telecast, somebody is in there, just kind of like how we are with our little slides and pictures, just clicking through cameras to get to the right view. Like it's not like a clean cut. It's like, let's cycle through 8 different camera views, and nope, that's a fan. Nope, that guy's still in motion right now. Nope, that's not right. That's not. I mean, extended periods of some pretty wild stuff.
We're playing with 1980 technology right now. That's this is the golden era for us, Soly.
So the broadcast opens up, and it's Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus playing together on the 11th green, and Augusta National not looking pure in this time period between the cameras and just the era of agronomy and whatnot, not looking pure. And it opens up with this shot of Arnie hitting a putt from off the green on 11. And look how far back he takes this putter. I mean, he mashes this putt. And my immediate reaction was like, holy, are these greens rolling at a 5? And the answer is no. He puts it off the green on 11.
He puts it into Martinez or whatever.
Almost puts it into Augusta Country Club. And then he steps up and actually makes that par putt coming back in Arnie fashion. But continue on with some of the entertainment aspects. I just want you to look at this putting stance. Sorry, now I'm flipping through images like they are. I want you to look at this putting stance. Have you ever seen? I had to work my way back into this, but apparently this is how Hubert Green putted.
Wow.
They don't have any graphics for who any of these players are. And man, if you want to test your ability to try to find names, like go back and watch some of these broadcasts and try to guess who these people are without the names flashing up on screen. Because again, if you're wondering why Nicklaus dominates so much in this time period, this is how one of the best players in the world putted. I mean, his hands are between his knees. Like it looks like he's going to hit his leg when he takes that back.
I'm just going to real quick show you. This is go back to Seve's camera. This is Nicklaus's putting stance. I mean, it's like I kind of love back then that there was just sort of how it was done. Everyone had their own unique kind of crouch, and like this wasn't all this like technical shit. It was just like, hey, like figure out a way to get the ball in the hole, man. And
this is another image of green putting. It's almost like Michelle Wee tabletop with the crouch, but it was a bit of a tough scene.
Hubert Green living up to his name there with the green shirt, green striped pants, the green pants, green collar.
Again, some of these aesthetics in this time period are just incredible. I believe this is Gibby Gilbert just blowing smoke out of his nose in the 17th fairway as he's ripping a heater in the middle of it. I think my pictures are out of order here, so I'm kind of trying to piece this together. But the telecast actually begins. The announcers don't come in. It's only an hour and 26 broadcast on YouTube, and the announcers don't start until the 46-minute mark. And it just, again, I wanted to choose this one because I wanted to see the Seve like collapse here, like that happens here, and the almost choke. Again, with the bogey on 10 and 11, double 12 and bogey 13. And he hit a 6-iron from 155 on 12 into the water, short and into the water. If you want to know how far the ball was falling by back then.
It's so fun to like, you see these guys be like, oh, is it 1-iron or 2-iron into like 15, like 16. They're hitting often like 2 or 3-iron. Like it's just completely different era of skill test.
This was Jack Newton who was ripping the heater in the middle of 17 fairway. Apologies to the Newton family there and
Gibby Gilbert.
Seve was quoted afterward about this collapse that he was having. He said, "I say to myself, you stupid, you have comfortable lead. Now you lead by 3. You must try very hard." And
look at you getting in the impression game. I love it, Soly.
I mean, you kind of have to. Well, it is written out, not with like, how would that work, right? If somebody is speaking in a second language as a journalist, would you kind of fill in some little words that they miss or any of that, or do you like spell out exactly what they said?
I think you got to spell out exactly what they said. Like we put something in quotes, it needs to be something that was actually said. I think it's the important part. And Seve obviously felt comfortable enough speaking in English, at this point in his career. I think early in his career, he didn't. He just spoke with a translator or whatever. And so, like, I think you absolutely have to quote what the literal thing is he said.
Jenkins would say later when asked what he had felt at this point, what he might have been saying to himself, he said, "The fight was on the inside for me. What I say was, son of beach." Literally, Jenkins types that up. B-E-E-C-H, son of beach. The stalwart Gibby Gilbert birdies the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th, and then steps up and stuffs it on 17, which would have given them a look to get to 11 under par.
Apologize, I was not familiar with your game,
Seriously.
Gibby Gilbert.
The broadcast does not pick up Seve until the 15th hole, and Seve does make a birdie to get to 13 under and kind of get back out to that lead. But man, they do such a great job. I love watching this stuff of like letting the big moments breathe, following Seve as he gets to 16T, zoom in shots on his face, like the nervous twitches of, fixing your pants. And Seve does a cool thing just throughout. I'm trying to immerse myself in this and try to understand the appeal of Seve, right? There's so many people that speak with such reverence for this guy back in this time period. Not a lot of his competitors, but fans love this guy. One thing that was interesting is after almost all of his shots, he would take his hat off and just like let his face be seen. And like he would wave to people and like he would not walk. Like he'd finish a hole and then like take his hat off as he walked. And like Vin Scully is the announcer. He's talking about this guy that has this charisma. Again, he's 23 years old. He's not that well known to the American audience.
And now the great 23-year-old Spaniard is coming up, waving to the fans.
And I know Scully from baseball stuff, so I keep expecting it to be. That's a foul ball down the line. And so he hits a shot into 16, and he's obviously playing the draw in there. And you hear his caddy, and his caddy goes, "Eat it up. Be a 1." Like, I love this call that his caddy gives at it. It goes long. It's the bone shot. It goes long there. But Gibby Gilbert steps up on 18. Can't handle the pressure. It's just rope hooks one. It goes through the woods and on into that old practice area. And it just shows, it's just kind of fun to watch Seve pair with this Jack Newton fella who's ripping these heaters coming up. Seve takes a 1 iron off of 18, and they know it's the first time in Masters history that 2 foreigners finish in the top 2. They call them foreigners. I did that.
Fuzzy foreigners, yeah.
I love it.
Gary, what do you think about all these foreigners winning the Masters?
After he wins, I'm not going to try to do the impression here, but after he wins, Vin Scully tells a story. He said his agent, Ed Boddard, had been at a luncheon last week in London, and he was introduced by the Toastmaster as the manager of professional golfer Ballerino Ballesteros. Well, they butchered his name a week ago, but no longer. Severiano Ballesteros. In the aftermath, Arnold Palmer would say, "I used to play that way." Which, you see a gray-haired Arnold Palmer, whacking putts off the green out there. And it just kind of is an interesting quote of kind of this weird little time period, kind of between the 70s and into the 80s where, the star power was a bit lacking outside of Seve in this time period. Watson obviously does a lot in this time period, but Seve would say after, "I'm going back to play the European circuit where I have a lot of friends. Over here, I'm too lonely." That loneliness, said Seve, made Masters Week the hardest I've ever had. There was a very big pressure this week. Maybe I feel more at home in Europe. And when asked about his up and down play, he said, "When up is very nice, when down is very bad," which I think should be on a t-shirt. When up is nice, very nice. When down is very bad.
Well, let's get Casey on that. I think that's being I would definitely wear.
Maybe the favorite fact that I uncovered on this one. Seve got a $55,000 check for winning first place. Golf Magazine was offering up an extra $50,000 if you would have broken the scoring record. Almost doubling the purse. A Golf Magazine almost doubling the purse if you would have broken the scoring record. And he was 16 under through the 5th hole with 3 par 5s to play. And I think the record was either 17 or 18 at this point. I think it was 17. Yeah. So I don't know if he was feeling the pressure on doubling up his money or what, but I could not believe. I found the fact it said a Golf Magazine. I'm like, wait, a Golf Magazine? No, literally Golf Magazine was offering up $50,000, which was a heck of a lot of money back then. But
I'm kidding. That does make me laugh journalistically about like, here's someone we're allegedly trying to cover. Oh, and here's a bunch of money from us for like doing well.
There was no Spanish press at the Masters.
Wow.
They had all these foreign credentialed people, and there's no one from Spain that came. This was Seve's 25th professional win at that age of 23. Dan Jenkins wrote, "The Masters was Ballesteros' second major championship. He won the British Open last July. Never did he deserve to lose it, for he had simply lapped the field. When he went to the last 9 holes on Sunday with a 10-shot lead on everybody, it raised the question of whether the American pros are spending too much time getting rich off their 8th place finishes. Ballesteros is not only immensely talented, having both length and style, but he's obviously hungry. Anyone can stumble into one major championship. It takes a rare ability of one kind or another to win 2 of them. Ballesteros seems destined to take many more majors. Consider what his game combines: the length of a younger Jack Nicklaus, the boldness of a 1960s Arnold Palmer, and the putting touch of Ben Crenshaw." Dan's pretty. Everything I stumbled on in the last couple days researching this, Dan's stuff is pretty prescient in predicting out what's going to be the future. He doesn't call you a future star if you didn't, if you called you a future star, you probably ended up being one.
Dan, like there's some stuff that historically, like, I love about Dan, but I love so much about him that it's like you just kind of maybe write it off to some of the era. But man, what a great like observer of the game. What a sort of smart and when he wrote about you and said you were going to be great, it exactly what you said, it usually came true because he had seen, he had been covering the game since Hogan, and he knew who had the look and who was the deal. Shame he never quite wrapped his arms around Tiger. And in fact, I think like when he put his like top 5 of all time did not include Tiger in it. He was sort of still annoyed that Tiger never quite got what Jen Jenkins was about. But a fun read in all these going back.
Could have been some other stuff going on with that as well that maybe wasn't the highlight of Dan Jenkins' career. But again, not a whole lot in this. I was hoping for a more out of this one, but I found an interesting article that was kind of circulated everywhere by the Associated Press, which was TV looks for quality golf. And I just found a lot of the nuggets within this article. Very interesting. This was 44 years ago, talking about, golf has always been a little unique. In the other major sports, athletes compete for more points, runs, or goals. Golf alone believes that less is better. Similarly, golf looks at its declining television ratings and explains that although less may not be better, it isn't really worse. It's the quality of the viewers, not the quantity. No sporting event is more reflective of this elitist philosophy than the Masters, which begins today and will have its final 2 rounds on CBS Saturday and Sunday. It's an invitation tournament with only a select few playing and only a select 2 advertising: Cadillac Cars and Travelers Insurance. You won't see any shilling for beer, soda, or small cars, products for the masses, on the Masters. You will see half as many commercials as normal because the Masters is very picky about interruptions, but CBS won't lose anything. It just charges twice as much per commercial. And the 2 sponsors don't seem to mind. They're just happy to be there. Quote, "You buy the Super Bowl for the numbers. We buy the Masters for its high and special demographics," said Dick Simon, director of corporate TV for Darcy McManus, the ad agency that buys half the Masters commercial time for Cadillac. "It's the higher income male we're trying to reach," said Simon. "This is golf's lot in life. With so much sports on the tube every weekend, golf is never going to be top-rated programming. Golf is alive and well, there's just very effective counter-programming against it," said Frank Cherkinian, the executive producer and director of CBS coverage. This will be CBS 25th consecutive Masters, and Cherkinian has skillfully pulled the strings on 22 of them. He would famously go on to do every Masters through 1995, so another 15 years after that. At the Tournament Players Championship in March, the big names came out of the pack to stir things up. Lee Trevino won it by beating challenges from golfing greats Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player. All that was missing was Arnold Palmer hitching up his trousers. Although ratings were down in 2/3 of the 1979 tournaments and were also televised in 1978, advertisers are not deserting golf. They know that at thousands of private country clubs around the country, they're watching golf, not boxing, Cherkinian said. The top-rated golf events in 79 were Bob Hope and Bing Crosby because they are celebrity tournaments that attract the fringe fan. And in recent years, NBC and ABC has understood this better than CBS. In the past, Cherkinian has opted for more pure golf instead of an occasional quickie feature or interview. But Cherkinian is changing his tune a little. The drooping ratings have something to do with it. So does the fact that CBS is doing 20 tournaments this year. So CBS is jazzing things up by putting microphones on players. Like 2 weeks ago at the Heritage Golf Classic, when Tom Kite told the nation that John Schroeder was playing the course in slow motion. Miking up players in 1980, 44 years ago. I did not have that. This whole article, you could almost print again in 2024. Like none of it kind of seems dated or anything other than at that time, 20 tournaments seemed like a lot. They thought they were oversaturated with 20 tournaments. Try 48 that are on television now. And, but the model of, less interruptions. We don't care about the declining ratings. It's reaching the right people, the high income people. I just found that to be for almost a half a century old article, that to be very interesting.
One of the things I read in the Clifford Roberts piece was that he, for the entire time that he was the chairman, told CBS 4 minutes of commercials per hour. That is it. No more than that. And that was the standard forever. And at the US Open, they would have 10 minutes, 12 minutes. At all the other majors, they would sort of jam their commercials in. But Clifford Roberts was basically like, if we're signing a 1-year contract every year because we want to be able to walk away from it if you ever violate the terms of this, you will not get to broadcast the Masters, and we don't care if the ratings are lower. We're going to have the product that we want on television, and that's part of what made the Masters the Masters.
Totally. I mean, you read The Making of the Masters, the David Owen book that is, popular read this time of year. It details all of this. Their philosophy in 1956 was like the right way to build the profile of a tournament. It was not about the short-term commercial gains. It was like, we're going to do everything to make this a great experience for viewers, attendees, everything. And look at where this tournament is now in 2024.
All right, so
that's all I got. Sorry, that was light.
I
know, but
that's
bring
okay.
us home. Yeah.
We're gonna go back to 1989. We're gonna spring forward a decade, and I will, skip some of the early tournament preamble here as we sort of get to, because the ending of this is really what's the meat of 1989. The defending champ is Sandy Lyle of Scotland. The favorites coming into this Masters are Greg Norman, Seve, of course, Tom Kite, and young Mark Calcavecchia. So it is cold as F this year. This is going to be a miserable slog of a Masters. Jenkins is writing, the azaleas are practically frozen. There's wind and rain blowing hard all week. But guess which recent NLU podcast guest is our first round leader?
Kenneth Green.
Not quite, although Kenneth will appear later. Lee Buck Trevino at age 49 is the solo leader after a first round 67. Trevino, of course, memorably hated the Masters for many years, changed his shoes in the parking lot, swore off of ever coming when they made one of his sons pay $15 for a badge, was just in general. Clifford Roberts once sent him a note saying, I'd like to meet over coffee and have like a discussion about why you won't come to the Masters. Trevino wrote back, I don't drink coffee, and ignored him. That's how sort of annoyed he was. But at this point, Lee is sort of softened a little bit. He is at 49 years old. He has a new baby. So you can imagine, Soly, what you're going through, the exhaustion of having a new baby at 37, 38 years old, what it would be like for Lee at 49. But Lee is, in the muddy, windy weather is sort of making it so that everybody's tee shots kind of get hung up. There's not a lot of rollout. And so this surprisingly gives an advantage to Lee, who says, I'm a mutter. I can get around this course now. Of course, Lee is super colorful. They bring him into the press tent afterwards, and they say, can you take us through your shot by shot, Mr. Trevino? And he says, man, I'm a Mexican. I can't remember all those shots. They say, that doesn't even make any sense. As someone with a wife who's Mexican, I don't know what to say about that. Was he emotional when he finished? The press asked him. He says, I'm not an emotional individual. When it comes to my family, yes. But golf, no. When I'm finished, I'm just looking for a beer. How are the greens out there today, Mr. Trevino? Well, they're fine in practice rounds, but when the tournament starts, they put STP on them and they get real slick. Why did he think so many years that he couldn't play here? He says, well, Jack Nicklaus told me I could always play this course. And I said, Jack, I'll play you in $1,000 Nassau if you play my tee shots and I get to play yours. He didn't say anything after that. If Jack had to play my itty bitty tee shots, he would have quit the game and opened up a pharmacy in Ohio. Trevino talked a little bit about his tortured history of the Masters. He said he no longer changed his shoes in the parking lot sitting on the trunk of his car because, quote, I've upgraded to a van. Asked if he had any regrets about hating Augusta so much, he said, sure, I always have regrets. When you talk as much as I do, you're going to put a shoe in there every once in a while. He said that a man walked up to him before the tournament and looked at his swing and said, you know what, buddy, you won't break 76. And he said, I wouldn't have taken a quarter of that. And I'm a gambling man. Trevino had dropped 22 pounds this year before the tournament and said that he was feeling great, but also said that if I'm leading on Saturday night, I might not even show up on Sunday. I'll probably have a heart attack in my hotel. Interesting enough that writers at the previous year, Trevino, at this point, he's 49. He's still into the Masters on his 5-year exemption from winning the PGA in 1984. But in the Masters the previous year, had shot 83-81 to miss the cut. And in the parking lot, the writers caught up with him by his car. And I'm going to a bit approximate his quote because the writers use bleeps in this instead of the actual swear words. But I think I'm going to try to use what I think the actual swear words are. So if you're driving in your car, listen to this with your kids, put this on mute or tell them to cover their ears. I hope to shit these fuckity fucks don't fucking bother to send me another fucking invitation next fucking year, Trevino said after missing the cut last year. But he's changed his tune and he started loving the Masters this year. One of the columnists, Larry Guest of the Orlando Sentinel, said that Trevino leading the Masters at 49 was as improbable as George Bush doing fundraisers for the Democrats, or Willard Scott squeezing into a leotard for a performance of Swan Lake, or Princess Diana whipping up a batch of chitlins.
Do you think they had like a sheet, like a traveling sheet of phrases like this? Like, all right, I'm going to work this one in there. I haven't used that one yet. No, I've been used that one in 3 years. I can use that one.
The Willard Scott is fat jokes are very prominent during this. Like the political cracks are. There was no stick to sports back then. You could just make kind of like cracks all that. So Nick Faldo is a shot back at 3 under. And Scott Hoch, who has not won a tournament in 5 years on the PGA Tour, is at 2 under. Conditions are even more brutal on day 2. But guess which recent NLU podcast had the round of the day?
Kenneth Green.
Ken Green. That's right. He shot 67 on a day when the average score was 75.8. Faldo and Trevino are tied at 3 under. Trevino kind of hangs in there despite a 74. Seve and Crenshaw and Scott Hoch and Ken Green are all kind of hanging 2 strokes back. Green is the talk of the press tent for some of his previous antics. So I think he covered some of these in the Ken Green interview, which I hope everyone will listen to. But in case anyone didn't, he admits during the press tent interview afterwards that he called Magnolia Lane ugly previous years. Those trees just don't do it for me, Green said. I was talking with my caddy about it on the range today, and I said, I still think they're ugly. Sorry, it's just a drive with trees. The press says, why don't you like Augusta? He says, I guess I'm just more of a down-to-earth person. I have a hard time understanding their ideas. For example, the average golfer has no chance to play this course. They ought to do something and let the average Joe play here. Maybe a national raffle. They'd love it. And it would be one of the biggest thrills they'd ever have. And they'd raise a lot of money. This was, of course, the year that he was sneaking his buddies in through the gate because he only had 4 tickets that his ex-wife was withholding from him. So he's sneaking them in not only through his trunk, but he's like telling them to like sneak around back through the like where the driving range is. A couple of them get nabbed by the Pinkertons. He says, maybe I shouldn't have said that they were sneaking in because my guys couldn't get in at this point. He tells the press that his goal is to throw a putter in every water hazard on the PGA Tour before he's done with his career. He's up to 8 putters thrown in lakes. Because when putters are good to me, they're good. But when they're bad to me, they have to die an ugly death.
I have to report, since the podcast episode, he did tell a story where he threw one in the water, I believe, off the 10th green at Pebble Beach, or at some point, like hucked it from decent carry from the beach. Then that somebody went diving for it. Whoever that was emailed me after the podcast episode, was like, I'm the one that got the putter. Like I have the putter that I pulled out of there.
What
it's
a
amazing
piece of golf memorabilia. Gary Nunn of the Dayton Daily News said that Green was about as out of place on the PGA Tour as Madonna would be in a covenant. God, I hope that in 20 years people aren't dunking on my writing the way we dunk on some of these columnists from newspapers. A lot of people think of me as a rebel or a maverick, Green said. I just don't fit the mold. I'm just not polite all the time. I couldn't fit the mold even if I wanted to. What's the mold of a golfer anyway? A stone-faced guy who's all polite all the time and doesn't say what he thinks? I can't do that. He had to sort of recount. He flung his wedge at his bag during his round where he saw 67, and the crowd booed him. And Green got sort of pissed at him. He had actually been fined earlier that year for flipping off a woman who had sort of booed him. He says, I was in no mood for that. And Green said, this is about the Masters again after he flung his wedge and got booed. If those people did something wrong at their job and I booed them, they'd be mad too. I hope, well, you know what? If they'd have kept it up, I might have gotten it into it with them. We would have had a big Masters brawl.
This is the equivalent of, damn you people, go back to your seats.
Maybe Arnold Palmer would have joined in on the brawl and just start beating Masters people's asses. The weather still stinks in round 3, but Ben Crenshaw is able to surge out to a 4-stroke lead before play is called because of the weather. Trevino stumbles badly at this point and is on the way to shooting 81 when play is called when they're on 13th green. Faldo finishes 5 shots behind Crenshaw. He's just all over the place. He kind of thinks he's basically blown his chance. He shot a 77. He's 5 strokes back, and he basically goes immediately into thing and tosses away. There's a lot of talk of putters. He throws away a putter and picks out one of the other 7 putters that he's brought from England at this point. Seve is lurking at even par. And guess who is back for more pain and suffering, Soly, is Greg Norman, who surges up the board with a 68 to get in contention. Everybody is miserable about the weather.
Can we pause on that to say, like, biggest takeaway from this all of our deep dives is the longevity and the major championship prowess of Greg Norman, and just the constant nature of him being in the thick of it.
An unbelievable, like, not only an unbelievable dick, but obviously an unbelievable golfer.
In more ways than one.
Oh, damn it, Saul. I walked into that one.
Like a walk on the beach.
Never did I imagine in my professional life would I be podcasting at 46 years old about another man's giant penis, but whatever. This is the pinnacle of my professional life, clearly. So anyway, so everybody's still miserable about the weather at this point. When a van drove out to pick up Faldo and Trevino, they hopped in and the van ran out of gas immediately. And apparently Trevino went ballistic on the guy because they had to get out of the van and sit there in the rain and wait for another van to come. And Faldo was asked what Trevino said, and he said, "It is simply unrepeatable." Again, choking is sort of like a prominent theme here. Like everybody, all the people are pointing out whether, Crenshaw has the stuff to hold on, even though Crenshaw has won a Masters at this point, whether Norman has the right stuff to finish off on Sunday, whether Faldo has the stones to finish. Faldo, even though he's won a British Open at this point, he's been gaining the reputation among the English press, especially that he cannot close on Sundays, that he will wilt under pressure.
Was Big Randy the one just running the press center at this point? Was it just like, if you hadn't won 6 majors, like, oh, you must be
just a little boy.
I like guys that win. Yeah, it's a bunch of little boys out there. Maybe it's kind of hard to close these things. That might be the truth here.
Other than, like, I would say modern game like Spieth, who obviously has a bunch of majors, is there anyone who has won majors who people are like, oh, I don't trust them at all? Like, we could close in a way. I mean, it's a great, maybe Phil, but Phil has sort of, turned that reputation around in a lot of ways. Like if Phil was leading by 3 strokes at the Masters in a month, there's no way that I would think like, oh, Phil's totally going to blow it. I'd be like, well, Phil's probably going to win yet another major. Like of course he's going to hang in there.
Is it Rory? The answer to that question?
That's a good question. Rory doesn't that's a good question because it's not like he blew the lead in St. Andrews. Like he got walked down. He was, really he didn't make any screw ups at LACC when Wyndham won. I feel like Rory's not going to blow a lead at this point, but he's probably not going to go out and like just blow the doors off anybody or hit those shots that are going to,
you need the one big shot in both of those. You needed to really just not hit the bad wedge at LACC and really just hit one ball close at some point at St. Andrews, and you would have greatly improved his chances.
Yeah. So on Sunday, they have to finish up the final round on Sunday morning. It's the first time in maybe 10 years or something they've had to finish the Saturday round on Sunday. Crenshaw comes back to the pack a little bit, and so Faldo kind of starts out just like blazing the front 9, 4 birdies on the front 9. On the back 9, he makes on 16 one of the prettiest putts that you'll ever see, just a curling like downhill 18-footer. He says afterwards that it was kind of like on the fringe. He couldn't mark the ball. So he had mud on it. So it was even more impressive that he made the putt with mud on it. And then on 17, he rolls in a 40-footer that hits the cup going like Wyndham Clark speed. Just roll. I mean, it goes dead in the heart. And so, but Venturi thinks that if he had missed it, it might go off the green. And Faldo says later, like, I hit just 2 like totally fluky putts during the day. Like so like, again, like fate playing a pretty, like obviously skill takes it to make the putt, but a little difference here can make a big difference. So his only mistake of the day is that he bogeyed 11, but he had birdied 13, 14, 16, and 17 to shoot 65. It's all
Jesus,
miserable rain. I'm going to show you here. This is later in the day. They are squeegeeing the greens like in between groups. That's how, and every drive that they hit, they're basically saying, hey, there's casual water where I'm hitting, and they are allowed to drop. I didn't really know this, but like with casual water, they basically are like, go find a dry spot.
Yeah.
So when Faldo in the playoff later, he gets to move his ball like 20 yards right on 11 and get like a way better angle into 11 where he eventually like wins the Masters. I was like, wow, like the casual water rules are, I'm not familiar with that at all. It was kind of shocking.
It's anywhere if you have to get clear of water coming up from your shoes where you're standing. But yeah, that I've seen 20 yards. That's not that surprising. The drainage probably wasn't nearly as good then as it would be now. And yeah, you can get some massive relief drops from that.
So he finishes at 5 under. He's in the clubhouse like 40 minutes before the leaders come in. He should have been joined by Greg Norman, who was at 5 under, but came and was in the middle of the fairway on 18 and hit a 5-iron that came up short of the green and could not get up and down. And he bogeyed to what was eventually missed the playoff. Norman
Seriously?
yes.
This is
yes, seriously.
I'm
What?
today years old. No, I'm today years old learning about an 89 missed call from Norman. I did not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He should have, like, if he makes par on 18, he's in the playoff with Faldo
Oh
and Scott Hoch later. Norman says afterwards, I think this is like a week later because he stormed off and didn't talk to the press, but he eventually says, I hit the best 5-iron of my life. I thought I was about 8 feet from the hole and it just spun back. I'm really disappointed, but I did a good job of hiding it. Scott Hoch, who I barely talked at all about, plays really well. And this is kind of a shame that he's going to go down as one of the biggest chokers in history. Still now people joke like, what rhymes with choke? Scott Hoch. Because he gets to 6 under through 16 holes with no bogeys on a day when it is miserable. I mean, it's like 48, 50 degrees. The rain is, the guys have umbrellas or whatever. But on 17, he's kind of over on the right side in like where the mounds are. It's a little different now, but there's trees now. But he's got an open but uphill shot to the green and just full Icarito 20 yards over. Like it hits the back edge of the green and just goes zooming down the hill. And Venturi is immediately like, he's dead. He's making 5 or 6 right there. I think he's in serious trouble. I don't think he'd make way more 6s than you make 5s from down there. One of the things that's awesome about Venturi is he calls, like, he doesn't subscribe to the rule of like, don't call the ball when it's in the air. The shot's up and he's like, oh, he's in big trouble. This is bad. This is really bad. And you see it like land and it's like, oh man, Kevin Venturi knew his shit. Like
he was sweet.
So Hoch hits, he's got like this really nippy wedge off of very wet grass from like, but we're from behind 17 green. So it's like right of 17 green. But from our perspective, like the pin is upright and he's way down left. Hits the nippiest wedge that you can possibly imagine. I mean, it is as good as a wedge as you would see hit by anybody today. Venturi, like while it's going, it's like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And the ball almost goes in. I mean, it like rolls right over the edge of the cup and like comes out to 5 feet. Koch later said it was like the best, chip that he'd ever hit in his life. He's got a 5-footer. But Ben Crenshaw, who's been struggling kind of all day, he's made a couple bogeys. He's not drips in a 25-foot putt before Hoch has, Hoch is waiting to sort of for his par putt. Crenshaw gets to 5 under with this 25-footer, and the crowd was pulling for Crenshaw clearly goes nuts. Crenshaw does the speed thing. He doesn't even take the ball out of the cup. He takes off his visor and he's like walking, strutting along the rope line, just completely like the crowd is going bonkers. And you can tell like Hoch feels like a little bit rattled because of what has gone on, because now he has to make this putt to hold the lead. He doesn't think at this point what Faldo has done. So he's thinking like, oh shit, like Crenshaw and I are going to be tied. Pull like a awful like little pull that nips the edge of the cup. It's painful to watch. Faldo and Hoch and Crenshaw are all tied at 5 under. Faldo is obviously in the clubhouse. They both drive it like right down the middle. Crenshaw and Hoch. They're absolutely like position A, just right of the bunker. Crenshaw he goes first, hits a terrible iron shot. I mean, when the ball is in the air, Venturi says, oh no, not there. Ends up in the left bunker. He hits a decent like chip out from there, but it's not great. It's probably 10, 11 feet. Hoch hits a pretty good 5-iron to be right of the pin. He's got maybe 20 feet and he rolls a putt that just probably misses by like 2-3 inches. I mean, it is a really good putt. You feeling like, all right, Scott Hoch's going to be in a playoff. Crenshaw has a par putt that you think they're saying this putt's going to go in. This is the best putter in the world. Like, absolutely, Ben Crenshaw. This is the moment he kind of lives for. I would think this is one's going to go in. Doesn't even hit the hole. Like, Crenshaw is like shook. Like, he cannot believe that he just pissed away a chance to be in a playoff at the Masters. So Hoch and Faldo in a playoff. The playoff it starts on 10. Hoch has never been in a playoff at this point in his entire career. Faldo has, of course, lost a playoff to Curtis Strange in the U.S. Open prior to this, so he has sort of weathered a little bit of playoff stuff. The drive that Faldo hits on 10, he goes first because they do the flip of the tee, and Faldo's, it's horrendous. I mean, it probably goes to, he's using a persimmon at this point, and Hoch has a metal driver. It probably goes 230, 240 off the tee. It sits up on the top of the hill, and he's got 235 into the hole.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it doesn't even make the hill. Hoch hits a beautiful like rope draw down the hill, probably 40, 50 yards past Faldo. Weiskopf on the broadcast says, it's virtually impossible for Faldo to hit the green from here. And he's right. Faldo like dumps it in the right bunker. He had a stance where like his left, it was kind of downhill. His left foot was lower than his right. So like to be able to get Weiskopf basically said it's impossible to hit the green from there. I mean, Nick Faldo could maybe do it, but I don't see. Hoch's only got 190 left. He hits a really good shot. He's probably 18 feet below the hole. Wow. And I will show you the pic here. You'd think like, I'll take this, to sort of like, what looks like could be two putting the Masters any day. Like this is where he's got basically all he's got.
I'd call this probably closer to 30 feet. Like this, okay. You expect a two putt in that situation though, for sure.
This is what Faldo does when he chips out of the bunker. He's got this to make par, does not make it. And
call it an 18, 20 footer for those of you listening. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we come to Hoch hits what I would say is not the worst lag putt, but immediately again, Venturi is like, oh boy, that's no gimme. That is no gimme. To me, like right here, it looks like,
it looks like a gimme.
You just tap that in, right? They keep saying it's like way more downhill than you would look. I don't know. That 10 green is super severe. So you think so. Hoch gets up to this ball, and look at how he's lined up here.
No.
I mean, I wish I could draw like lines on this, but look how his foot line is and where the putter is aimed. I mean, it is just like, it's almost like he's playing it like it's going to break like uphill to the right or something. It's just like, I don't know. It's kind of bonkers. So as you may know, Scott Hoch misses this putt to win the Masters. I mean, he had taken, I would say, at least a minute and a half, maybe a little bit more before he set up to hit this putt. And everybody is like, oh man, like just too long. Apparently Crenshaw was watching on TV from the interview room and was like, Jesus, hit it. Like to saying, that he was taking too long. Hoch throws his putter in the air. Is the famous shot of like, he catches his putter and then goes over to kind of just walk and just be like, whoa, like what have I done? He's got longer coming back. He's got like a 3.5 footer just to avoid losing the Masters with a 4 putt on, he does make the one that comes back. But at this point, like he's sort of shook. He keeps looking up at the sky. Again, this is where there's like so much casual water. They both hit pretty darn good drives. Again, Hoch is probably 20 yards longer than Faldo. And Faldo has to take he gets a kind of an advantageous drop because he hits it in the middle of the fairway and gets to go way right on 11 and hits, I would say, one of the most cold-blooded shots that you will ever see. I mean, he has to sort of like flirt with the water, certainly has to flirt with it, like kicking left into the pond, but hits to an unbelievable, like probably a 25-foot on 11 at this point is playing like 485 with persimmon woods, coming into this. So I think he hit like 3-iron into there. Hoch steps up, does not hit a good iron shot. It sort of flails way right. It's just off the green. He chips it to 4 feet, but he, of course, never gets a chance to have putt again because Faldo rolls in a 25-footer to win the Masters. I don't have the shot of it, but raises his hands up in the air, sort of looks to the sky, is just like almost kind of in shock. And Scott Hoch has to sort of like, gives him a quick handshake, has to reckon with like, holy shit, like I just missed a 2-foot putt that would have won the Masters. Said he couldn't help but think about the gravity of it all. Said that when he went to go and putt, he said, well, this is for all the marbles, to himself. This is for immortality. Probably not the best thought. They asked Hoch in the press Ken afterwards, do you think you took too long over the putt? And he says, he pauses for a little bit and he says, yeah, if they gave us that long to putt on tour, we would probably have 8-hour rounds. Faldo says he held the door open for me and it felt like destiny. You'd sit there. It's tough. You sit there and you're thinking, well, he's got that to win. I wasn't really thinking anything. You never pull against a guy, but well, he missed it. Hoch says, I wasn't nervous over it. It was strange. Maybe there was a split second of indecision where I stood over it and how to play it, but I knew what I wanted to do. But between my brain and my hands, they didn't get the message. And then as Hoch sat down with the press, as he's offered one of the darkest quotes I think I've ever seen. He said, all I've got to say is I'm glad I don't have a gun right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Scott could have been said in jest.
I think probably was like, but still, like, it's a pretty dark joke to make.
Yeah.
Hoch was not the most popular guy on tour, which I did not know at this point. There was actually a poll that he was named the least popular golfer on tour, a bunch of tour players, by the Dallas Times Herald. The assistant managing editor, Charles Cooper, sent out this poll. He pulled 147 tour pros and 50 of them returned ballots, and Hoch got the most votes. Wow. Hoch and his agent, Dick Madigan, declared the poll bogus, declaring that only 3 players had actually written his name. But the editor of the Times Herald said that Hoch got the most votes and it wasn't even close. This kind of bugged Hoch for a while. He was sort of thought of as like, oh, by the way, that putt on 10 is only 3 putt of the entire week. Yes. People kind of thought that he just was sort of a pretender. I mean, he was 33 years old at this point. And he won the Varden Trophy in 86 with a scoring average of 70.08. Critics complained that Hoch had not won the PGA Tour event that year, and he had lowered his average by entering marshmallow events. The ancient and honorable Varden Trophy is in danger of becoming a joke, Thomas Boswell wrote in Golf Magazine, and that rhymes with Hoch. Rick Riley wrote a really beautiful column a couple years later. What people didn't know about Scott Hoch is that in 85, his son was, I think his 3-year-old son was kind of limping around, and they took his son Cameron, they took him to the hospital to sort of make sure he checked out. They thought maybe he had a sprained ankle, and they had x-rays, and they thought maybe that he had cancer, he had bone cancer. And so they did all these tests and on his femur, and it turned out he had like a spot that was sort of a rare disease, but it wasn't cancer. It was called Kingane, I think is how it's pronounced. Medication got better, but he had to stay in the hospital for a while. And during that time in the hospital, like, they got to meet all these other families with all these other kids. And so they bonded with a bunch of these people, and all these other kids kept dying. Like when they would sort of have to hear news of like, oh, those people we met in the hospital, like our son ended up passing away. And it sort of like haunted Hoch for a long time. And between like that and the missing the putt at the Masters, he had determined years later after his son had left the hospital, I want to win a tournament because I want to make a donation to that hospital. I want people to know that like their medical bills can be covered if they can think. And so he kind of just like sort of kept himself at this, like, not a lot of fans, but this sort of hung on him because he was kept like saying it to his wife, like he felt this pressure because he wanted to like make a donation to this hospital. He said after the Masters, this is all from the Riley column, he packed himself, Cameron, and his daughter Katie, and that treasonous putter into their Plymouth Voyager and drove to the next stop on the Disappointment Trail at Hilton Head. Along the way, the magnitude of the miss sunk into his brain and settled in his heart. I feel like I've let you down, he told his wife as they drove. I feel like I let you down and my parents and your friends. But more than that, he felt like he had let down the hospital. I couldn't sleep for 2 nights, Hoch said. My dad couldn't sleep. Chip Beck, who's his best friend, couldn't sleep. I guess when your friend has just blown the thing that you yourself has dreamed of winning, it's a little hard to take. This is Riley still. Choking on tour is considered something of a disease, and the general belief is that it's contagious. Hoch became to any gathering of tour players what Charlton Heston was to the Red Sea. He would walk up and they would part. Some guys would see me and they would feel so bad they wouldn't know what to say, and they would sort of duck. Hoch sought out Ed Sneed, who had needed one par putt over the final 3 holes in the 1979 Masters to win, and bogeyed them all. He lost in a playoff to Fuzzy Zeller and has only won one tournament since, back in 1982. Just be patient with the media, Sneed told him, because they will never allow it to die. So 2 years later, Hoch won a tournament in Las Vegas, and with a winning sort of purse was like $200,000. Huge purse for that time. And he announced in the trophy ceremony that he was donating $100,000 to that hospital, that he was basically the difference between first and second place, plus another $10,000 as a thank you for what they did for his son. And so Riley, the closing line of Riley's column is, hey, how about we take that poll again of like who's the least popular player on tour? So
wow.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that journey to end that one. You made me want to go back and watch that one, by the way. Describing that action was like, holy shit,
it was surprised me. I mean, all I had ever really heard of was like, oh yeah, Scott Hoch missed a short putt, and I'm certain I'd seen the replays. But when you really like watch the broadcast, and at this point we're getting like 3.5 hours of broadcast on the thing, like it's sort of, you know, we're getting a full. This is like kind of, the Masters is really, I feel like, coming of age as its broadcast product.
It's just the images you flashed up there. The golf course too matures a lot in 9 years from 1980, because that they got bent greens at this point, and it's a totally different experience. Because that, I don't want to tell people not to go back and watch 1980, but there just wasn't a whole lot there to react to. And yeah, this is starting to get in the era when the Masters becomes this massive television product.
Also, so I don't hate this split screen here, where we show the guy who's about to get, you know, they do that a lot in this era of like, we'll show the player what's happening, and then we show his opponent who's like has to eat it. If
totally. And gosh, I hate the zoom in on a putt as it's in motion. Like, keep the player in the frame so we can see their reaction to it. Yeah, I got coverage takes for anything. So, all right, KVV, that's going to bring a wrap to our historical Masters deep dive. I call this one four fun Masters. I think that kind of fits the description of. The description fits for what we covered here today, but
absolutely,
we're super amped to flip the calendar over here into Masters Week next week. As of the time of this airing, we'll be on site. Lots of live shows, lots of coverage of any kind, lots of writing, lots of social content. You can find it pretty much anywhere. You can find our content, and we look forward to the best week of the year. So thank you for your time and efforts researching these and entertaining us with your stories and impressions. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and everyone have a great Masters Week next week. Cheers.
You too, Soly. Thanks.